So recording the video was me and Alex
Mhm.
playing, right? And then Alex jumps in, and then so it was the like me, Alex, my friend Ryan, and my friend Andrew all commentating on the video. And I'm just like, I don't want to waste their time. Like I don't want to
Yeah.
go through this whole thing. And even more so, it was me and Alex playing, and I don't want. They were commentating over it, so to them it was new, which is a good perspective to have, right? So you have the strategy perspective between me and Alex, like what we were thinking,
Mhm.
but then you have like kind of like these commentators who are impartial, which is a good feeling too. But then if we go through the whole thing and it's not recording and we have to do it again, then like they lose that impartiality, right? They already know everything that happened, so
Yeah, and then you're like, "Oh, does he have the pummel?" You're like, "You know if he has the
yeah,
pummel or not." Yeah, I know what you mean. Every time I make one of these drinking with Bronson things, probably in the first 5-6 minutes, I'm just constantly staring down at the little bar that shows the
right. Is it
microphones and
recording?
stuff. Like, "Oh, is this recording or not?" Because if it's not, I'd hate to be like, "Hey, you know that 2-hour conversation we had? You want to have it again, like tomorrow?"
Oh, try to be spontaneous as well.
Yeah.
Like try to be like upbeat and act like we didn't talk about it. I don't know,
Yeah, like, "Hey, you know what I think about the Monarch spoilers?" Yeah. Yeah, but tell me
yeah.
again. But yeah, tell me. So, what did you guys do? You did like a store playoff, right? That looked awesome. I watched through it,
Yeah.
and it was an intense match.
Oh, it was very intense. So, okay, so we did an armory event. It was the store championship. So the way we were doing the armory events and pretty much you get the four cold foil heroes, right? So each of those weeks was just another week of armory events, and then we were doing the crazy brew that comes in it as kind of like the store championship for like the fifth week. Because it
Wow,
doesn't really it. Go ahead.
a cold foil crazy brew.
Yeah, the armory kits come with the four heroes and the crazy brew, but it doesn't really tell you what to do with the crazy brew. It's just like here, you can have it. Like so.
That's awesome.
So we made it our store championship on the fifth week, and so uh when we did that, we had like we actually had enough for a playoff too, which is really good because in previous weeks we were only getting like if you have less than 9, it's just 3 rounds cut to standings. Like you don't there's no top cut. But we had I think exactly 9 to be able to have a top 4 cut. Um yeah, and I we got there, got to top 4, got to top 2, and that was the video that's on my channel right now is the finals.
Nice, man. And I looked into that recently. Yeah, isn't that the Swiss breakout? And you have to have more than a certain amount to have the top four. Is that what it is? Or
Yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about. So it's
yeah.
like anything less than 9 players is according to LSS should be just 3 rounds, and then wherever standings are at the end of 3 rounds, that's where you just pay out to that. Um, and then, but if you have 9, you're supposed to have at least the top 4 playoff, and so that's where we got to. That's what we like. Whenever we have 9 players, it's so much more hype because I don't know. When it's 3 rounds cut to standings, you're just like, oh, it's over. Like, like
Yeah.
there's like, but when there's a top 4, there's always that person that sneaks in, and you're like, oh, maybe they can do something. Kind of like the wild card in the NFL or something like that. It's like they snuck in, and let's see if they can, cause some trouble in the playoffs.
Oh, for sure. And with Flesh and Blood, you can build decks like that where you never know what they're going to do. Either they pull out some crazy combo and they can beat a higher tiered player. I like that part of the game where you could build certain decks that, have a lot more risk but a lot more reward.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree. There's a lot of I mean, I'm currently editing our last armory event. It was Blitz, and there's definitely some rogue decks that make it to some crazy to the top like brackets or whatever. So for
That
sure.
sounds cool. And where do you guys play again? It was Cloak and Blaster, right? Or
Yeah, so that's what we play at Cloak and Blaster on Tuesdays, but I don't record there yet. I'm trying to start soon. Um, it's kind of just a dimly lit place, so if I was gonna record there, I'd have to actually bring like equipment to like some kind of lighting system to like at least brighten up whatever table I'm recording at.
mm,
But the one we were recording at is the Collective in Orlando or in Maitland, I think. But basically Orlando.
that's cool, man. And I've talked to people in the past, like, wouldn't it be cool if there was some sort of contraption that had the lighting and all that kind of stuff built
Oh, just
in?
all built in? Yeah,
Man,
that'd
that
be.
that is what the game needs, I think. That's what TCGs need, because when you go into a game store, you're right. When it's dimly lit or cloak and blaster, it's
Yeah.
tough to record on the spot, especially with a camera. And man, lighting is the worst. Figuring out all that stuff and the screen glare off the cards and I don't.
Oh yeah, that was like the number one comment we got was this is really cool. I really enjoy this content. I can't see the left player's cards at all. Like
Well, yeah, but it's impossible. It's so hard. It doesn't look hard when you're looking at a video, but when you're trying to make a video, it is the most frustrating thing because like you have to have like light at like certain angles on the left and the right. I feel instead of just above,
yeah.
and yeah, it's pretty
You pretty
interesting.
much have to have lighting coming from like almost every angle so that it doesn't like reflect in the way that it glares off the camera. And it's kind of I'm still new to that. I haven't recorded or done anything like this before, so just for us just recording it was really cool, and like being able to put it out there and have people watch it is and we've gotten a lot of positive comments too so far, which I'm ecstatic for, and I'm really excited to get more content out there for sure.
Oh, for sure, especially gameplay. And do you guys play any like sealed or something? Any of that format?
Yeah, so uh sealed the sealed format I'm not super big fan of. That's the 6 packs format.
Hmm.
I feel like that's kind of sacky. However, the draft format as a limited format I love.
How do you play
Draft
draft?
is yeah, we have drafted a couple times, and draft is very fun. Draft, there's a whole meta game between like, oh, is the guy taking ninja next to me? Like, oh, like that was how we don't have this recorded, so I guess I can put it out there. But I won a draft because literally everyone just passed me ninja cards. I just noticed after like the third time or the second time the pack came around, all the ninja cards were still there, and I guess people were just afraid to play a combo based class in draft.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, these cards are good enough on their own, so I just started taking them. I was like, oh, I had like a semi built ninja deck by the end of the draft. So
I think Ninja's
um,
incredibly strong, especially if you have a bunch of yellow or blue pitch zero cost cards. Can then because then you could block with a lot of your hand and then keep one card. Kadachi Kadachi, one damage, one damage. That's a good turn. If you do that over 5, 6
yeah,
turns,
for sure.
yeah.
I've
And then
never gotten more value out of a blue scar for scar in my life. I'll tell you that.
well, it's true. I mean, it comes in for 2 damage, so people feel weird not blocking it. So that's a card for a card trade. And so when you do draft, so everyone gets. See, I'm not too familiar with those types of formats. I mainly
Sure.
play online, TTS, and stuff like that. But with draft, everyone picks a class at the beginning, a hero, and then they have 3 booster packs. How does it work?
So draft works. You don't have to pick your class before or anything like that. So what happens is you just everyone gets 3 packs.
Hmm.
We had a weird number of players. We had 10. So normally you would have a pod of 8.
Hmm.
But we had 2 pods of 5. So that makes you get more options because you see more cards. But so pretty much what happens is each player gets 3 packs. You open the pack 1 pack at a time. Uh, you move the token to the middle of the table. That doesn't matter. You just get rid of it. And then you pick out 1 card out of the pack and then pass it to your left. I believe. I believe it goes left, right, left. So you pass the first pack. You open it, take a card out, pass it to your left, and then
Hmm.
the person next to you will and then they'll pass you their pack and pass it. Then you take 1 card out and pass it to your left. Take 1 card out, pass it to your left. Once the first pack is completely gone, then you will open the next pack and do the same thing, but pass it to your right instead. And then you repeat this process until all 3 packs are used, and then you build a deck out of the cards you drafted.
Hmm.
So there's a meta game that goes into that. So when you're drafting and you pass it, right, and you notice that especially with a 5-man pod, it's kind of a little bit easier because you see the same pack, I believe, 3 times,
Hmm.
as opposed to 2 times with an 8-man pod. So on the third go around, if I notice that like, oh, these ninja cards are still sitting in here, I'm like, nobody's drafting ninja. So now I have free reign to pick generic cards early and then come back to ninja cards on the go around.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
smart.
so
Because then if you
so
know nobody's playing that class, then you can pick those up later and do the
yeah,
generics
absolutely.
first.
So I can pick the strong like scar for scar reds, the things that like other people might like. If someone's like notices like, oh, I'm trying to build brute over here because I saw good brute cards early, I need to kind of stick to brute and pick like, I don't know, barraging beat down red, and then But meanwhile, I'm sitting over here like, oh, I know these ninja cards are coming back. No one cares about this class right now.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna pick all these good generic cards and then come back. Like ninja cards are just gonna fall in my pocket pretty much.
That
Like,
makes sense because if you're playing, if you say from the very beginning, I want to play Brute, but the guy to your right or left, it wants to play Brute as well,
hmm
then you're totally boned from that side. Then you're not getting any Brute
yeah,
cards
you're
from that
fighting over
side.
the same cards for sure.
Wow. And that seems really cool because it's more of not only strategic deck building or not only strategic playing the game, but also building it on the spot. It seems like
Yeah,
that's a lot of skill. And I think what's interesting to me is I heard James White say a lot that Monarch is going to be really based on draft format and that it
I
has a
hope so.
really big what is it? It's the best draft experience that he said that the devs have ever experienced. And it really does reduce the amount of I would say angst around people saying, "Hey, I don't have the cards that I need to
Right.
play," you know? Because in draft, how much money do you have to spend? Like 10 or $15?
I believe most stores do $15 because you're basically paying for 3 packs and then a tournament entry on top. But you
Yeah.
get 3 packs when you look at it, and you get 3 packs that you got to pick through over the course of really like um uh you get to pick. Sorry about
Oh
that.
no, you're good. What kind of
You get
dog
to
you
pick
got?
packs. It's a German Shepherd, Australian Shepherd mix.
Ooh, nice, man.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a good
Um,
guard dog. That'll keep you
yeah,
protected.
she's trying to protect us right now, apparently. Um, but you get to pretty much pick through like if you're playing with a normal 8-man pod, that's 24 packs in the pod, right? So 3 times 8 would be 24, and you're passing those packs around. You get to pretty much build this like I don't know, like pretty much like a starter deck if you think about it, with like rares and maybe even majestics if you're lucky enough, or maybe if you're lucky enough, you pull that class legendary out of there like while you're drafting, which is pretty intense.
Yeah. And is
Um,
it the Blitz format? Is it 40 cards in your deck or 30 in
so it's
draft?
30. So for
Okay.
draft, yeah, it's 30. You're allowed to. So any card you draft is allowed to be in your deck. I mean, obviously you still have to like commit to the class rules. Like you can't drop down Bravo and try to play like warrior cards. But any card you draft is allowed to be in your deck. Your deck just has to be a minimum of 30 cards when you set to the table. And funny enough, that's what Cracked Bobble is for. As much as the meme with Cracked Bobble is, that's
That's why
if you
people are
can't build
hoarding
a.
up.
Yeah, I don't know, I don't get it, but it's like I don't know. Somehow like basic Pokemon energies go for like $1 million. But
I will never understand that card. I will never. It's just, it's like the biggest meme. It reminds me of Wall of Kelp in Magic the Gathering, if you ever. But I think that card had some usage, but it's just such a meme card
yeah,
because
I don't get it personally,
you
but
only need it if you're
people.
bad at the game, if you're bad at drafting.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
like funny enough, one of our players actually had to use a bobble, and he's just like, "Oh, I realize why this card is awful. It does nothing and pitches for 2. Like any blue would be better, but it's just sometimes the way you draft, especially if someone had competition for your class and you didn't realize it until
Yeah.
maybe too late, and then you're like, oh, I can literally only build a 28 card deck. So I need to put in 2 bobbles. And then it just feels
Yeah.
bad. Like it's supposed to feel bad. It's called a cracked bobble. It's not
Yeah.
like diamond bobble. Like,
Yeah.
but you wouldn't know that looking at the card's value. So
Or just regular bobble. And
yeah.
when I'm thinking about it more, and you've played more of that format. Well, I haven't played that format at all, so you've played a lot
Okay.
more than me. But if you've used all your cards and you only have crack bobble, it doesn't defend for anything. So at the end of
Mm-mm.
the game, are your hands tied behind your back where you could just use your weapon? But
Yeah, if you
yeah,
fatigue with bobbles left in your deck, it's
that's
bad. It's
GG.
like yeah, it's like fatiguing with a potion. Like because kind of like if you fatigue with a
Oh
potion,
yeah,
the potion on its own doesn't do anything. So you're basically pitching that potion just to swing your weapon every turn, which is basically what the bobble's going to be doing. But
yeah,
then again, they're able, if you're fatigued and they're not, then you're swinging with hammer or whatever, and then they're like, LOL, put down like all my stuff and hit you with cards you can't defend against. So yeah, usually if you fatigue with bobble, it's probably going to end for you pretty quickly after that.
yeah. So are you a store owner too? Do you
I am not a store owner. I do sell some of my cards on TCG Player, but that's just to kind of fund my own hobby. It's not like a. I am not a store owner. I am just a very passionate Flesh and Blood fan.
Yeah, no, I feel you.
Yeah.
I'm with you there. And is it easy to sell on TCG player? I haven't tried yet.
Yeah, I mean, I would recommend it to anyone who has like cards they just want to get rid of. Like if you're trying to pay for Monarch or anything else coming up, I mean, TCG Player is pretty easy. I mean, the nice thing about TCG Player is you don't have to take pictures of your cards, which I'm a big fan of. Um,
That's huge because doing
yeah, you
all
just
that on
list it.
eBay sucks.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you list on eBay, you always have to take a picture and you always have to have a description or whatever. But TCG Player, you just make your account. I think you put in like your bank account information because that's where they deposit the money when you sell cards, and then
Hmm.
you just tell it whether or not you want to do international or not. And I don't do international just because I don't know enough about it. So um, and yeah, just people buy your cards and you get the email saying, hey, someone bought XYZ card, and you ship it out. That's
Huh?
all it is.
What's
Yeah.
the fees on it? I could probably look this
Uh,
up somewhere. I've
yeah, no,
been
it's fine.
interested in it, but it's cool to hear from someone who like does it more, regularly.
Yeah, I want to say um
And is there a
I
listing
want to
fee?
say I think it's like 13% after
Okay.
everything. But I'm a low level seller, so I think if you are a store owner, you get like certain discounts and stuff. And then, but me as like an independent seller, just like a private whatever seller, I think I pay
Yeah.
like the full 13%. Which I'd rather sell on Discord if there's a buyer, but sometimes just like it's easier just like for supers that aren't worth too much money. I don't know. It's just easy to list like, oh, I've been drafting for a while, so I have like 4 Steelblade Supremacies. I just not that's a Majestic, but I have a Singing Steelblade. So when I was
Mhm.
saying I have 4 Singing Steelblades. They're just sitting in my binder. Let me just list 4 on TCG Player. And a lot of times when you list a good amount, like 3 or 4, someone will just, oh, I need a play set, so they'll just buy all 3, which is really nice.
That's cool.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple. Yeah.
And how long have you been playing the game? So I've been around since Crew, and I feel like it's been nothing but hype, 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 and craziness. It's just been a wild ride. But when I look back in the history of Flesh and Blood, from the time of January through August of 2020, it looked pretty chill. It looked like a little small, nice little village of people having fun playing a trading card game until
Yeah, I mean,
things blew up. How long have you been
so
in it?
I've been playing since I don't want to say the exact month, but I was definitely playing in WTR format. Like before Arcane came out. I think I like found the game really early. I'm a fiend for like new card games.
Hmm.
So I was big into Force of Will, was big into Final Fantasy TCG when it came out. I played Magic, Pokemon, and Yu-Gi-Oh. Funny enough, Flesh and Blood's like the only one that's really held my attention for a good amount of time at this point. Um, but yeah, I was playing like really early. I mean, I can even kind of date myself in terms of how long I've been playing. I remember buying a foil Enlightened Strike Alpha for $35
Oh my
and
gosh.
thinking this is way too much money for this card.
Yeah. And it's a cycle,
um,
right? In Flesh and Blood,
yeah,
it's like
it's
you have the buyer's remorse. There's an insane amount of buyer's remorse, and then that like quickly fades away like a month or
oh
two
yeah,
later.
it's faded away real quick in recent months.
Oh yeah.
I bought my tunic for 150, and I remember thinking this is an alpha tunic, and I was thinking like, there's no way this card should be this much money. There's no way. This like it's like me and my friend playing this game. Ryan, who's on the one video that's posted now. He's like kind of the guy who I've been really like trying to start this channel with. I mean, along with Andrew and Alex and everyone else in our group. It's kind of like everyone I consider part of the adventure company or so.
Hmm.
But but yeah, I remember buying that tunic for 150 and just going, it's just us playing. Why am I buying this? Like,
Yeah, because
um,
$150 is a lot for one
it
card.
was a lot.
I
It
mean,
was a lot, especially for a game with no promise at the time, right? Other than me playing it, I was like, this game is real. Like
yeah.
I remember playing and sitting down. I bought the starters, like a brick of the starters. I actually bought the original Rooted kit eventually when that came out. So it came with like 2 decks. Yeah, the 2 decks, or I'm sorry, the 2 boxes, the brick of starters, the 2 Ira decks, which I still have sealed in my thing, which apparently now those are money, but you know,
The zero
uh,
cost decks are
yeah, I
money.
mean, again, it says 2018, and I guess that means something to somebody. So,
I guess so. Dates matter,
yeah.
apparently.
uh, but yeah, I've been playing since then, and ever since then, it's been a fun ride. We've been trying to get a lot of my friends into the game. It's been a process. Like you said, like
Mm.
early days was just, hey man, you want to try this game? Like I would go to Pokemon locals. Funny enough, and I quit Pokemon, but I would still go to locals because all my friends were there, so I just hang out and like in between rounds, like kind of talk. And I would bring like at first I was bringing like Final Fantasy TCG, and I was like, hey, try this out. They were like, it's okay. And then no, it was like Ryan, who was the first guy who like jumped on board with me. I was like, hey man, try this new Flesh and Blood game. I think it's really fun. I think you'll dig it. And he tried it, and he's like, he fell in love with Brute, and that just it screams him. Like if you know him at all, it's definitely the class he would play. And it just ever since then, it's just been like us playing. And then funny enough, Andrew, who's also on that video,
Mhm.
tried to get him to play it originally, and he did not like it at first. But I think I gave him the wrong class. I
What
gave him
class?
Guardian, which
Guardian's
if
tough. That's what I play.
yeah, especially if you've ever played starter deck Guardian, it's kind of like, like
Yeah,
um, th-
I think
there's just not
Guardian
a lot of.
does. Yeah, you have to build a lot of blues. I think blues and reds. They
Hmm.
have too much variability in that starter deck. I remember.
Yeah, and it just doesn't flow right, and it's kind of boring. You do like you even in starter deck format, Warrior and Ninja are kind of like I do this, 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 and this, and then like Guardian's like I play my one attack and pass. Like,
Yeah, if you
yeah,
can't even
so
attack after you've been
if
pummeled with a
yeah,
bunch of attacks. And I think
so
Guardian really needs Crippling Crush. Like that is the whole like once
oh
you hit
yeah,
a good Crippling Crush, you that just swings so much momentum. Without that card in the starter deck, it's tough to do
that's like
damage
the whole
against someone with
deck.
it.
I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
it really
it's
is. That's crazy,
um
man. So in the beginning it was more and this is oh, I this is really cool to hear because I haven't really heard anything from people who have been around since the beginning. I haven't heard too much of that talk, but was it really just nobody had really heard of it, and when you introduced it, it was a hard
yeah.
sell?
So I found the game. I found the like how to play video that LSS put out, that like 6 minute video, and
Hmm.
I thought that was great. I think DM Armada was one of the first ones too that I found his how to play video, and I think that one's really cool because like shout out to DM Armada, he did a really good job explaining what the class feel is like
Mm.
as opposed to just like the base mechanics, and so um I think that's actually really helpful to new players is not just like how to play the game, but like how each class feels.
Yeah, I
Um,
remember that video. That was really good because you're right. Each class has a different feel. It's not the same gameplay with each one.
right. And so, yeah, from there, it was like you said, like early on, like nobody knew about it. I only knew about it because, I mean, I don't even really know. I wish I could tell you exactly where I saw it first. But I knew like once I saw it, I was like, I want to play this game. And I think what
Mm.
hooked me is the same thing that Rudy talks about a lot is the gear. Like being able to outfit your character. And I think like as we get more gear and that becomes more of a decision point, like because right now there's kind of a best in slot for each hero. You kind of know exactly like, hey, I'm going to play warrior, so I'm going to play Arcanite Skullcap on my helmet. I'm going to play
Hmm.
Fandel Spring Tunic as my chest piece. I'm going to play Brave Forge Bracers, and then I'm going to play the warrior legs, the I can't remember the name of them, but the warrior legs.
Yeah, I remember
Um,
Brave for
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Bracers or
Bolters, something
Bolt. Yeah,
bolters.
something like that.
Yeah. So I'm gonna play those four equipment, and then a little bit of a change up if I'm playing like a wizard or a rune blade, right? But pretty much you know like what you're going into the game with. Um, and I'm really excited to see like flesh that out more, and we get like, oh, you're playing warrior, but your warrior looks completely different than like what I'm
Mm.
outfitting my warrior with, and I think I'm really excited for that to happen.
Yeah, no, you have a
Um,
really good point because different decks could do different things. I mean, you could be up against a warrior, but once they get more card pool and more equipment to verse different
mhm.
types of decks, you're right. That is going to be a big thing because now you don't really need that much equipment in your in your deck, but that could be a huge thing in the future.
For sure, I agree.
That's gonna be cool. And the Monarch product has like 307 cards, I believe. That's a
Yeah, and
huge
I think we
set.
just we found out 6 legendaries as opposed to the 5. So
Yeah. So I mean, there's probably going to be. So yeah, we can switch over to that.
Sure.
I just only looked at it for maybe 10 minutes, and oh my gosh, the artwork is insane. I mean,
Oh, I
it
love it.
has
That
like
was the
angels and demons. It looks it's insanely epic
it's
compared to everything
beautiful.
else.
That's
It's
whatever
insane.
you say about Flesh and Blood, whether it is your thing, it's not your thing. The artwork is just it's just perfect. I don't know. I don't have any problems with the artwork.
Yeah, and there's
It's so
going to be
beautiful.
6 legendaries, and it looks like there's going to be 4 new heroes, right? From
Four
what?
heroes, and they said completely new mechanics, whatever that means.
Wow, that's insane.
I'm thinking new classes, and I think they're kind of saving it for like their big class reveals with their the content creators they want to pick. Um, Either Rudy or I think DM Armada had Runeblade or something. But I know he's a big Runeblade guy, and I know I think Red Zone Rogue had one or at least some cards.
Yep,
So I'm excited to see. I'm excited for spoiler season. I think it said April 6th
I
on
think
the
so.
on the little splash landing page. But yeah, I'm so I'm ready for Monarch, man. Being
I know. Well, we're ready for it, but I don't know if we're gonna get it.
oh yeah, let's the I
Just-
don't know.
we're ready for it, but you might have to wait a little bit longer. No, I mean
Yeah,
it's too funny how that is. I mean, it just does seem like the game is way too successful, and people have really turned this into a nice
it's like
homey
that DJ
village.
Khaled meme where it's
Uh,
like suffering from success, and he's like this or whatever.
yeah,
Like,
it's exactly like that.
yeah. Um. So I appreciate them making a first edition set. Like I do like that. I do like the whole collectability thing and that they're taking collectability seriously because I mean I can kind of compare this to it's like Force of Will, right? So I don't know if you've ever heard of Force of Will or played it
Oh
or
yeah,
anything, but
I purchased
um
a couple cards from Force of Will.
oh awesome. So I think Force of Will's biggest problem, other than Millennia of Ages, if you're from Force of Will, you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
Other than that set, one of their biggest tenets was we want to make the game affordable, right? And so they said if you buy 2 boxes, definitely buy 3 boxes. You should pretty much have a play set of every card.
Mm,
Which, as a player, you're like wonderful, right? You're like that's great. Like if
yeah.
I buy 3 boxes and I'm good to go, like that's a lot lower buy-in than most TCGs.
Yeah.
But as a store owner, as a collector, as a secondary market person, you're thinking like these cards are worthless.
Yep.
Like I can't like if 3 boxes gets you a set, pretty much, other than maybe a few like uber rares or whatever, um, then like it's really hard to sell that set because like yeah, selling an uber rare for $200 is great, but when you had to open 4 boxes to get one and then the rest of the cards are junk, it's kind of like it's just not there for the secondary market.
Yeah,
Now on
because
the
if
other
everybody has the cards, then it's not special. Then the print run must be insane, and there's way too much out there, so the price has to go down if the
right,
supply is there. But then again, yeah, it's this conflict, man. It seems right. It's like you want to
yeah.
build something for the players, but also for the investment side of the thing. And one thing I've seen is I think Force of Will did it too. Didn't they do a card redemption program? I think Flesh and Blood could really go for that.
They did something like that. I think so, yeah.
I think
With like you could trade in commons or something like that.
exactly, and I think that it would be a huge thing in Monarch because right now, if people are buying the booster boxes, they have zero they have zero incentive to open them because they've seen
Yeah, I
all the
mean,
ones in the past with the golden sticker jump up in price. So they're like, oh well, I'm just gonna keep this under my bed for 2 months, and then I'm gonna buy myself a car. I mean, it's
right. That's kind
yeah,
of what I was thinking is like so to bring up Force the reason I brought up Force of Will is because like I think that's swinging the pendulum too far in the one direction,
mm,
whereas I'm kind of worried that LSS may be swinging that pendulum kind of too far in the other direction.
that's a good
Because
point.
yeah, so on the flip side, if you benefit collectors and speculators and store owners too far and you make everything very expensive, then what does your player do? Well, your player comes in and he's like, "Hey, I want to draft a set," and you're like, "Well, this set that just came out, we're gonna draft it, but you're paying $15 a pack. It's a $50 draft, right?" And you're like, I'm not doing that." Like,
Yeah,
yeah. So you're pretty much telling the player like, "Hey, you can draft, but just wait 3 weeks," right? Like,
yeah,
and that's to me that's kind of a feels bad. Like personally, like it's just too much to me in that direction. I my philosophy, and I know some people share it, some people don't, and it's great. We get a lot of back and forth with this on the Discord, on the like official Discord.
Hmm.
My philosophy is first edition should mean you were there, right? You were there when it was current, and whether it means 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, just more than 3 weeks. That's kind of like where I'm at. But
Yeah,
like
that makes sense.
like I said, I'm super excited for Monarch either way. I think it's gonna be a banging set. Like that set is over 300 cards. The art that we've already gotten looks insane. LSS has shown me no reason to not have faith in them in terms of the gameplay side of it. Like I said, this game has just been phenomenal as far as a gameplay standpoint
Oh, for
up until this
sure.
point.
And they definitely know what they're doing. And both of us have faith in them. But man, AJ, it really is scary. When Team Covenant sells all their pre-orders in December 2020 for a product that's coming out in April 2021, hasn't even been printed yet. I mean,
Yeah,
how many? I think everybody. The biggest question is how many people are actually going to play with the cards on release. Like how many people are actually going to be able to? Because even though all of us are going to be here at that time, all of us are going to be here with different amount of money in our wallets, and some people who have 300K who can just buy out a ton, like a room this size full of product, and just keep it like okay, that's my vault of that's my Monarch vault. Then
right.
yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how that plays out.
I mean, I can at least say that any box that hits my hands is being cracked. I can say that with confidence.
Oh yeah.
I have a few cases on pre-order. But like to your point, yeah, like I mean those pre-orders sold out like what? I mean, like you said, December, right? So
Yeah, it was in December, and I think they
for a
had
product that doesn't even come out effectively until May,
yeah.
like, like
I mean, that's
it's
impressive. That's and it's the thing we were talking about earlier. It's like your success leads to your what is it? Just discomfort or I don't know.
right. I mean, I just look at it like hopefully it's something like kind of like the Pokemon problem, right? I don't know if you were around when Pokemon was new or like base set. So I played a lot of base set as a kid,
Hmm.
um, or at least tried to buy base set. I remember going to the mall and running through store to store and just trying to find any pack anywhere. Just hey, do you have Pokemon? Everyone's like, no, we don't. We sell out as soon as we get them.
Wow.
Um, yeah, it's crazy, and I hope that this is the phase we're in with LSS and with Flesh and Blood, is we're kind of in that like, oh, the game's blowing up. It's going to become this huge thing, which we all want, right? We all want. I mean, I would love Flesh and Blood to take over Magic Spot. That would just be like,
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's like a dream right now. That's like a crazy like whatever, but I mean, but anyway, I would love for Flesh and Blood to at least be in that conversation, to at least be like, hey, this game is real. It's good. There's strategy there. There's depth, which a lot of people don't know yet because they haven't gotten to try it. And
Yeah.
I hope that LSS can overcome these supply issues. I mean, I know we have everything else going on in 2020 going into 21, but hopefully that's the root cause of it. And I hope that they're able to overcome those supply issues and just get the game into players' hands, man.
Yeah. And I mean,
Just let them play it.
even if people play the game and they say, you know what, I don't really see the full picture here, I feel that people need to realize that they've only been making trading cards for a year. There's so many years down the road of different, and we're going to have four new classes. So they're increasing the amount of classes by 50% essentially. And they're probably going to make four new classes maybe every standard set. So, once they make so many more cards, the amount of strategy and deck building, it's just going to go through the roof. And not only that, but there's not a restricted format to where it's like, okay, you can only use cards in the last year or two. It's you can use whatever card you want. So there's just so much potential in the game. And yeah, when I was a kid, I got into Pokemon a little bit, but I never had the opportunity to buy stuff from stores. I was always like trading around with a bunch of
Yeah,
friends and stuff, but it was huge at that time, and I saw people playing Magic the
massive.
Gathering. I didn't get too much into it, but yeah, Pokemon was huge. And
I would.
isn't it cool, man, how we're in this stage where when we were kids, Pokemon was the thing, and now when we're adults, Flesh and Blood is the thing. It's
Yeah,
perfect.
I love Flesh and Blood, man. In terms of
Yeah.
like, just when you compare it to, I don't know, man. There's just no game like it, at least that I've played, where it's just constant interaction. Like,
Oh yeah.
yeah, you just, I don't know, man. It's just so good. It's like literally like so directly coming from this, I was playing Yu-Gi-Oh, which is to your point. When you said about more cards, that's where I was gonna like kind of chime in, and just say like, yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh has an eternal format, where there's a ban list because you kind of when you're 20 whatever years old, you kind of have to like there's gonna be some brokenness.
Yeah,
There
broken
even with the
combos.
ban list, there's some brokenness, but but Flesh and Blood being an eternal card game, they're only going to ban things whether they do have a ban list set up. So in case anything ever warps the format in a way that shouldn't happen, like a combo that
Mm,
happens and it creates a loop or something, they do have that fail safe. So they can always ban a card if they feel it's necessary. But their main way of banning cards is the roll of honor, right? So when something gets 10 national wins, they retire the hero,
mm-hmm.
and then they promise to print a hero of that class so that all the class cards are still useful, but that particular hero has been kind of retired. I think that's beautiful. I
Yeah.
think that's like one of the coolest ways to handle it. Like it's just so interesting, and that's why I really think LSS has a gem on their hands, and I just think they really just are able to overcome the supply issues and get it out into people's hands. Because I think the more people that play it, the more people that are just gonna fall in love with it and actually stick with it.
And it makes the winners of the game feel like they have a badge of pride in my mind. I mean, can you
Hmm.
imagine that you say, I am one of 10 Dorinthia players that have won a big tournament in Flesh and Blood? You will always be 1 in 10. There will never be any more players who can win with your class.
Yeah, and you're immortalized. They put you on the
Yeah.
website and they kind of give you a little blurb about like who you are and like how you got there, and it's cool. That's something that I don't know if other games do. If they do, great, but I just think that's one of the coolest things
Do they give you a
ever.
card? Well, I guess they give you a golden
Hmm.
bordered card. But it'd be cool if they
They
gave
give
you a Dorinthia card if you won with Dorinthia. I don't know.
yeah, or let you design a card or something, like put your like spin on it something like in a future set or something like that. Maybe they'll do that for Worlds or something.
That would be really cool. Or make some of those tournament decks. Those would be really. Yeah, they would probably do that for Worlds, I would imagine. And do
Oh, the
like,
tournament decks are always a really cool thing. Yeah.
I love that's so cool because then you can play with a deck that you knew somebody went in, won a world tournament with.
Yeah, I think Pokemon does that, and you know what they really are good for? They're really good starter decks for someone who
Really?
doesn't necessarily need to be introduced to the game. So let's say you've played. We can even just, like put this right on Flesh and Blood if they decide to go this route. So let's say you played Flesh and Blood in the year 2020.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, oh, it wasn't for me. It was like Welcome to Wraith format, and you're like, oh, I kind of got bored of it, so I put it down. And you come back like 4 years later, and Worlds just happened, and you can say like, oh, there's this Worlds deck. I know how to play already. Let me just grab a deck that's already kind of meta and see how it plays, and I can see if I still like the game. So
Yeah.
it's like a structure deck that you get to like try the game out if you've already know like it's not the greatest from a learning experience like if you're like straight up brand new, but you get to kind of come in and say like, oh, is this what the game is like now? Let me I like it now. Like I like this is
Yeah.
way more interesting. I like the way this deck plays. I want to build a deck like that. So
Yeah, maybe you like the new types of mechanics that are in the game or how the games in the meta play out because yeah, sometimes you play some I played Hearthstone a couple months and I remember there's some times when the meta is just some really crazy deck that's just like the one with the warlock where you have to get like two golems and it didn't really fit to what I wanted to do. I wanted to do other things. So it was like, well, if you don't play that deck then you're not gonna win. So I could definitely see that happening, but with Flesh and Blood, man, there's so many different variations. It'll be really interesting to think too, because have you seen that it feels like Dorinthia and Warrior is really strong, but
yeah.
I think that that is only because Dorinthia is mainly just aggro face, just attack, attack, attack as much as possible. But once the game gets more progressed and more cards are produced, I think more control decks are going to be a thing because then you're going to have more instances to deal with that kind of attacks going forward. But it just seems like that is like the main strategy. It's She attacks you every turn. If you have the things that you have, then you do. If you don't, then she wins. But what do you think about the whole like meta of Flesh and Blood once it gets into the worlds and
Yeah,
mainstream?
so I think you're absolutely right that warrior is definitely a very much an aggro deck, at least as far as right now. Um, and usually, like I don't know too much about Magic. I mean, I've drafted it a few times. Like I like drafting Magic, but I feel like maybe not just Magic, but in a lot of card games, when a new set releases, one of the first decks that always is usually does pretty well is aggro, right?
Mm,
Because aggro is usually it's usually the simpler class or simpler archetype to play and build, and usually, funny enough, the cards are cheaper.
yeah.
Usually, it's a lot of little. In other games, it's a lot of like little things that kind of like spam the board, and you just go face, like you said. But then usually, as the meta develops, you get like mid range and control kind of sneak back in, right? And I think funny enough, I think we're seeing that exact thing happen.
Hmm.
So I think we're seeing like Wizard. It's not necessarily like control, but it's definitely like a class that people had to figure out. And so Wizard, even in early Crucible format, not even just Arcane format, but Crucible format, you just didn't see Wizard anywhere because it starts at a lower life. It's complicated. Um, it's like all the other classes are much more straightforward. Like even Mech, which I would say is probably the next more complicated class, isn't that complicated when you compare it, at least in my opinion, to Wizard. Wizard
Yeah.
is just this whole other beast of just like chaining things together, understanding. The biggest thing is it really rewards people who understand timing rules, like how when cards resolve, what does it mean when a card is played versus when it's resolved versus when you play the next one versus when you pitch this card, like versus when you activate Kano's ability versus what does instant speed mean? How do I play at instant speed? Should I play on my opponent's turn? Should I play on my turn? Like there's just a lot more. Whenever there's more variables, there's more room for error,
Oh
and
yeah.
so as people figure out Wizard, they start reducing that error. They start reducing like, oh, this is the optimal level. This is the optimal line of play. And so, but early on, you don't see that because you have tournaments. Those tournaments are happening. New Zealand tournaments and all those other tournaments. They're happening now. So you still have to figure those things out. But maybe you don't have enough time to like really like, oh, we have to test, and see like what's the optimal build. How do you play against each class? Whereas like a class like Warrior, you're like, I pretty much play the same against most classes. I just go
Yeah.
face. I just try to set up my hand in a way that I have like two buffs and a reaction and try to go in for the most part. But Wizard is completely opposite. There's a whole combo lines of play that the way one card in your hand different could mean that your turn plays out completely differently.
Oh yeah.
Um,
And yeah, I've
so
seen other Wizard players. I don't know how they do it, man. Like they're doing all this stuff. They're looking at their deck and doing the Kano ability and doing like five cards in a turn and drawing up and doing all this stuff.
mhm.
And as a guardian, I'm like, okay, how much do I defend? Okay, I'll do that. And then it's like, is it my turn? Okay, I'll attack you with my sledgehammer.
Yeah, exactly.
For six. All right, my turn's done. And oh yeah, when you're versing a wizard player, you never say that your turn is done. You say,
No.
May I end my turn, please, Mr. Wizard?"
Yeah,
And then he
Mr.
graces
Wizard.
you with your turn ending.
May I draw my cards, please? Thank you.
Yeah. And it's all good. It's just funny. It's just hard to remember that. And I always screw up the first
Mm-mm.
turn. I'm like, I end my turn. I'm like, no, no, wait, don't draw it. Like, oh yeah, I forgot. You're a wizard.
Funny enough, when we were learning the rules on how Wizard plays, so we're not used to playing at instant speed to a point where it matters, right? So for other classes, if you sigil a Solace during the end phase, which is technically illegal, it doesn't really affect anything because you would have just sigiled at the end of your turn,
Oh, I
right?
didn't
Instead
know
of the end
this.
phase. Yeah, so no one has priority during the end phase. So the only things that
Oh.
happen are end of turn effects and you're drawing and you're putting your pitch away and everything like that. But you do get priority before the end phase, even if you don't have an action point. So that's where you would play like in things at instant speed.
Gotcha. So
So
when's the best time to play Sigil? Because I think Red Sigil should be in like every deck, and I'm a little biased on. I just think it's a really good card. I mean, 3 health, especially in Blitz. That's a good chunk of your health right
yeah,
there.
I would say in Blitz, it's definitely like it's in most decks in Blitz, just because the health pools are so low. In constructed, it's a little. It just depends on what kind of deck you're playing. If you're playing like a slower deck, then yeah, I play Sigil in it. But if you're playing like I'm in my Warrior deck, I wouldn't touch Sigil.
Hmm.
I'm I need all my cards to be effective in terms of like putting pressure on my opponent. And so if I hit a Sigil, unless it's the very first turn of the game or my opponent's first turn of the game, like I
Hmm.
don't. That's the only time I would want Sigil in my hand. Other than that, is like I want cards that put pressure on my opponent.
Gotcha. So when I'm versing a warrior, and let's say they
Mhm.
attack me once, I block. They attack me the second time, I block. Do I have to play Sigil the same time as I block the second time because I have priority at that moment? Or then can I do it to where I block the second time, it goes to their turn, they have nothing, and then can I play it after that or no?
Yes. So what happens is you'll close the current combat chain. Like however, whatever you play, if you want to play it, like, you can play it during the combat chain if you want to. It doesn't really affect anything. But you can let that combat chain close. The turn player gains priority even though they don't have an action point.
Hmm.
Um but then so they'll pass if they don't have anything to do, and then you get priority, and then the turn only ends if you also pass on an empty chain. So that's when you would play your sigil.
Gotcha. But once you pass that time, then when it's the end phase, then you can't play Sigil.
Yeah, once you're in end phase, once you're cleaning up, basically you're taking all cards, putting them in the graveyard, putting the pitch underneath the deck, drawing your cards for turn. That's all during the end phase. Well, putting your cards in the graveyard might not be, just because you can close the combat chain without ending your turn, but whatever.
Yeah.
But putting your cards underneath your deck and drawing your cards up are all happen during the end of turn phase, and so no one has priority during that phase, and that's when you would. Oh, and arsenaling your card also happens during the end phase, and so that's what I
Oh.
was getting to. When we were first learning how to play, we didn't know those rules specifically, and so the wizard player would wait for me to arsenal a card and then start doing wizard things. So I
Oh.
basically effectively be a card down.
Yeah.
But then
That's funny.
that's funny enough. That's what prompted me to look the rules up. It's like this
Well, yeah,
doesn't seem
because if it's
fair.
the end of your turn and you have one card in hand, you don't want to arsenal because then they're like, okay, I can just
Yeah,
blow
yeah, yeah.
them up.
Before we knew the rule, it became this weird staring match of like, am I gonna arsenal? Are you gonna like do things? I'm like,
Oh, that's too funny. And
yeah,
you bring up a good point, man, because it feels like all the hero classes in Arcane Rising are just so much more complex. The complexity scale is so much more than Welcome to Wrath. So when I'm looking at Monarch, how do you think they're gonna ratchet it up to another insane level to where it's even more complex than Arcane? And if that's so, I mean, I can't imagine how much more complex they could make it. Because when I see a wizard or a dash player doing their stuff, it's just mesmerizing. I just look at it and think, man, that's just I'm not about that life. I'm about to swing my hammer, and when I get my crippling crush, you will know it. But other than that, I'm defending a lot and swinging my hammer. But I mean, do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, I
yeah.
can't
To me,
imagine.
like the hope. To me, like the hope is that there's a range, right? So that there's both, right? So you have like probably like one or two classes that are kind of on the one end of like the brute or the guardian level of play, or even just WTR level of play. There's really nothing super like crazy complicated in any WTR class. And I think that was actually, side note real quick, I think that's
Yeah.
brilliant. I think they did a good job of making each class feel distinct without making them feel complicated, so that you're trying to get this brand new game out there. You're like, hey, play these classes, and you're like, oh, these are really intuitive, and they kind of make sense. But anyway, going
Yeah,
back
can you
to
imagine
Monarch.
what what is it? Your first deck here, play this wizard. Have a
Oh yeah,
blast.
you're like, I don't even know what this does. This is crazy.
Yeah.
Like, oh, and like apparently I'm breaking every single rule in the game. Like,
Yeah. Instant speed? What is that? But yeah. Sorry, you were
but
talking about Monarch.
no, yeah, but back to Monarch. I hope there's a range. So I hope that there's you start off and you're like there's a class or two that are kind of not. Hopefully, all the power levels are equal, right? That's first and foremost,
Mhm.
roughly equal power levels between classes. It's not always going to happen. It's probably not going to happen with Monarch. It doesn't happen with most sets in general, but that's what you hope for. And from there can be like differing levels of complexity, right? Kind of like exactly like WT or not WT, Arcane Rising format.
Mhm.
So I think Mechanologist and Ranger are not very complicated. I mean, Ranger's a little weird. It has like the whole bow mechanic, but the card tells you exactly how to play the card. It says this card can be played from your arsenal, and like,
Oh yeah, that's fair.
yeah,
It's just getting
yeah,
the certain pieces in alignment is tough, but you know what all the cogs
right.
do. Yeah.
Like strategy wise, it's complicated, but mechanically, like learning it, like if I was like teach someone how to play Flesh and Blood and I gave them Ranger, I don't think they would as long as they've played a card game before or just in general, I don't think they would struggle too hard learning Flesh and Blood through Ranger.
Yeah.
However, if I gave them Runeblade or Wizard, and with all the triggers of Runeblade and all the Wizard shenanigans, I don't think that would be a great onboarding experience for Flesh and Blood.
No.
Uh, so so hopefully that's kind of where I'm going with Monarch. Is I hope that there's kind of that level of like complicated versus simple to learn. But I mean, just yeah, I think that's where I would like them to go with it. Um, I hope we're getting new classes because that'd be really cool. I mean, I think we have to be. And the only reason I say that is because I don't think there would be. How fair would it be, right? If like there's two new classes, but then like there's like the other two classes are like Warrior and Runeblade.
Yeah.
So now Warrior and Runeblade get like a huge buff to like all their set cards,
It would
and
totally
then
lopside it, and those classes would have all the cool cards, and the other ones would have too much variability. I totally agree with that. It's got to be new classes, and when you look at the lore book, even man, I mean, there's so many different classes on the I
hmm
think 16th page or whatever, and it even says on the bottom more to come. So you know that they're making so many classes, and that's what's going to be really cool. I mean,
yeah,
I love when games have so many different classes to pick from. I like when you can be your specialized person. And in 4 to 5 years, man, if they keep doing that, where it's 8 new classes every year, holy smokes, that's gonna be so cool.
yeah. I mean, going back to like onboarding my friend Ryan, like I said earlier in our talking, he played Brute, and he totally just it spoke to him. He's like, I want to play Brute, and now that's what hooked him on the game. And so the more classes you have, the more chances you have that of happening for new players. Is you're like, oh, let me look at a video or a sheet or like just a list of all the classes, and you say like that one. I want to play. I relate to ninja. That's like my favorite. I love ninjas in lore. I love ninjas like I love Naruto or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like
I
I
want to
just want to
be
play
Naruto.
ninja.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel you, man. There is something to that. And do you play any D&D? Because I feel like that concept is a lot in D&D where you want to feel like you are that character. You're role playing, you know?
Yeah, I've never played D&D, but I have played World of Warcraft. And in World of Warcraft, I played
Yep.
Hunter, and that's because like I've always loved bow classes. And so I have never played D&D, but I can totally relate to that statement. Is like I played World of Warcraft. I have to play the bow class. I played Skyrim. I have to like I just spec all into Archer. Like I just
I love
yeah
bow classes in games too, man.
yeah.
Oh yeah, it's just so much fun. Especially, I love the games where you actually get to control the bow and you get
Mm,
to. Yeah, Skyrim is a perfect example. I remember when that game first came out, and that is the first class I played. I just went around and from the beginning of the storyline when I could venture off, I just was like, screw the quest. I'm just gonna go north. And I just went and just murked so many people. I would be 50 yards away trying to get like the longest headshot. Oh man, it was so much fun. The bow classes are really cool. And I really wanted when I started Flesh and Blood to do more of the ranger, but getting that combo with the arrows
yeah.
and the putting them in arsenal and then other things, but I definitely think that that class has a lot of potential. I mean,
There's
the
a
cards like three of a kind. Are you serious?
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, just the simple combo of three of a kind into a tome of Fyendel is like broken.
that's
Like,
have people done that
oh
that you've
yeah,
seen?
that's
Wow.
like we've done that. That's like one of the classes we built. We built with three of a kind and two tomes for that reason.
Because if you do a three of a kind and a tome, how much health and cards is that?
So if you play the three of a kind from hand, so you drop one, draw three, so you go to six, and then you play the. You probably had to pitch a card to pay for or to pay for the tome that's coming up. So drop another one, you're down to five. And then you play the tome, you draw two, you're at seven. So you gain 7 life and you have 7 cards in your hand.
And then do you just pass and then next
It
turn you just
depends.
annihilate?
It depends. Or you can even you can Mage Master Boots the tome,
Uh huh.
making it have go again. And so now you have a 7 card hand. But you can only play cards from Arsenal from the rest of the turn. But you still have your bow and you still have your gloves in theory, at
And
minimum.
7 cards, which is
Yeah,
insane.
to get there.
I mean, I could see that deck really functioning well with beef up cards like Come to Fight and other ones where you put a bunch of beef up cards in your deck to where when you do have that 7 card, you could just pump up an arrow in to an insane amount. But I
Yeah, and
don't
let's
know.
not forget Azalea gives her arrows dominate.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're thinking like you can play a, I mean, it's a game ender, right? Even just going increase the tension, Azalea a Remorseless into Arsenal face up. So now, if you increase the tension and Remorseless, if you use both of those cards effects, increase the tension. I don't remember which one's which, but one of them says you can't play defense reactions from hand, and one of them says you can't play defense reactions from Arsenal. You just locked them out of defense reactions. So,
That's insane.
um, and then it has dominate. So then you shoot the arrow with dominate, and it has +3 from increased attention. So now it's an 8 arrow with dominate that can be defended with defense reaction. And then if it hits, which it probably will, every time they play an action card on their turn, they take another life.
Yeah, that seems
So
so crazy. And it's interesting how there's those types of things with really powerful cards. Like I was looking at the Command and Conquer into a pummel. That combo looks ridiculous. Have you seen that one play out? Because that seems like a game ender right there. I mean, if they have a card in Arsenal, okay, card in Arsenal's down, and then whatever card in hand is down, and then they've blocked with 2 cards already and take 4 damage. That's
yes.
nuts.
So usually our Guardian players will are the most likely to do this to you because I think only Guardian and some Bruteless that we're playing with right now that are in our little meta group
Hmm.
are the ones playing Pummel at all. And so yeah, of course they drop a blue, they play the Command and Conquer, and then they're like, do you defend it? And you're like, of course I defend it. So you drop your 6 defense onto it, and then they just like, LOL, drop another card, and then play usually blue pummel
Hmm.
because they're just gonna be playing a lot of blues. But even then, you take 2 damage, and you have to also discard a card, and you lose your arsenal. Like that's just filthy. It's
Yeah.
filthy. Yeah.
Yeah, there are some crazy combos like that, and especially I play Guardian too. And another one it seems is you attack with Anathos, right? And Matt G
Hmm.
taught me about this. He's on the Discord a lot. I played against him, and he said
Yeah.
people attack with Anathos. You block with let's say a 3 defense, and then you put a red pummel on, and then Anathos because you pitch 2 cards, it becomes a 6,
Yeah.
and red pummel is a 4, so you do 10 damage. And if they don't have a defense reaction, they're taking 7 damage,
They're
which is
eating it.
huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah, it's because the Anathosic is always checking the pitch zone. So yeah, of course. So if they blocked it, like, oh, you're swinging for 4, I'll just block with 3 and I'll take 1. You're like, no, you're not taking 1. I'm gonna play my pummel. And yeah,
Exactly.
it's pretty gross. Yeah.
And what do you think? So I played in the there's this bash tournament recently on TTS, and I don't have too much time in life, unfortunately, but I was able
Sure.
to join this, and I was so happy. And it went good, but man, the ninja players seemed ridiculous. I mean, that deck where you just Kadachi Kadachi and then you block with the 3 cards, especially in Blitz, man, you don't have that much health, and you can't take all that 1 damage poke. I mean, in my mind, I think you'd have to just rush those decks. What do you think? Have you seen that?
Yeah, it's rough, especially like so. I'm on the record with a lot of my friends. I am not the biggest fan of Blitz. I think it's a great format for new players, and I think it's a great format for quick tournaments. Like if you want to have like, I think it's the perfect format for side events at like a calling,
Mm.
right? So like side events would be like wonderful there. I just want to jump in with my Shiana deck or whatever deck. But as
You have a
soon as you make,
Shiana deck?
I actually played Shiana at a Blitz event Tuesday. Yeah, it
Wow.
didn't go well. Well, it went okay. I topped, but I lost in the first round of top. But
Did the guy come with an armored guard and
oh no, it
some?
was me.
Oh,
I played
you?
Shiana.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
You didn't have any armored guard?
So no, I did keep my eyes on that card all night long. Like it just stayed in front of me like all night.
And how
Um,
did you play it? So did you play it with all of the other class specifics? That deck seems really cool.
it was really fun. There's a couple of things I would have changed to my list specifically. Not to get too into it, but there was like an energy potion that I wouldn't play because you're already playing Teclocores,
Hmm.
which are just better energy potions if you think about it.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. So uh, what I just think Shiana is a class that will only get better with time, right? Because as more specializations come out,
Yep.
her card pool just increases, right? right now, all that she's really good at doing is you get to play these really impactful high damage cards. So like your two money cards really are in Shiana are Alpha Rampage and Crippling Crush. So
Yeah.
the fact that you get to play those two cards together is kind of cool. But other than that, you're kind of just like this weird generic class. Like if that makes sense. Like my best turns, this is gonna sound really anticlimactic. The turns that won me most games were I would be losing by like 6 health, and I would go life for a life, they eat it, scar for a scar, they eat it, and then like enlighten strike. So like at no point did I play any card that is like related to Shiana and her ability,
Yeah.
but like so,
Speaks more to the generics in the game.
yeah.
But no, it looks like a cool deck. I mean, when you have a bunch of cards from other classes and you're using it, you don't know what's going to be thrown at you, what it's going to do.
Yeah,
But
I'm really excited for that class as the game grows. I'm waiting for it. Kind of sucks because like I'm like thinking like wouldn't it be so sweet to be able to play red in the ledger, but I can't because even though it's a specialization, it's a I need a bow,
oh,
and I don't have a bow.
there's no
I can't wait.
generic bow.
Yeah,
I forgot about that. Yeah.
yeah,
And hopefully there will be, well, I don't know if they'd ever make a
they could.
crossbow. They could. Like a crossbow that is technically a bow that's generic. I could see
I could
that.
see so there was a bow in WoW. So back a long time ago, hunters in WoW needed ammo, but there was a bow that it was a legendary that didn't need ammo. It shot like magical arrows. So maybe in the future there could be a bow that doesn't need its like you can load arrows, but it also has an effect to like do 2 arcane damage naturally as like a weapon.
That would be cool. I
Maybe
could see that.
something like that.
And that man, that's a good point too, man. There's so many different, not only with the armor, but with the weapons. There's so much more room for doing different things. Like I think Guardian. I feel when I talk to a lot of people, there's got to be a shield, and it's probably going to come out in Monarch,
Gotta
maybe
be.
in other decks. But I mean, you see in the lore and the artwork, they're holding shields. I mean, they're
It's
called a
called
Guardian.
Guardian. They're
Yeah,
guarding.
yeah. You don't guard with a hammer. You guard with the shield, from attacks, and that seems really fun. Oh man, I'm gonna love that. But they could make magical bows, like you're saying. They could make so many different items, like a mace or all these different things. It's gonna be nuts.
It's funny, playing Welcome to Wraith format, I thought the design space was really limited. Funny
Hmm.
enough, I was like, I don't know where they go from here. This seems like so like what can they even do, right? It's just a different class that hits me in a different way, like and then
Yeah.
Arcane Rising came out and I was like, oh, they can do anything. like, like like the design space is like infinite. So,
Yeah, now that magic is in here, okay,
yeah.
this is another ball game. And that's a good point because I remember hearing some people who when they saw the spoiler for Arcane Rising that day, I think it was Voltaic Bolt, and they said
Mhm.
6 arcane damage and they were like
We all
this card
spec
is broken. You can't
well, we didn't
defend
even
it
know
with
what
this
arcane
at all.
damage was.
Yeah.
We all spec we're like, what does this even mean? Like how do you block it? Do you just take it?
Oh,
Because
that's too funny.
the thing was we didn't have any null rune like how null rune worked at all was not like explained. And so we were thinking like, oh, it's just we kind of understood it's just effect damage, right? It's a non-attack action.
Hmm.
But like so without no way to block it, do you just eat it? You
Yeah.
just like you just like
Yeah,
oh, I
like
guess
is it true damage? Yeah.
yeah, that's honestly it's kind of what we thought it was. It's like, oh, it's just true damage. It's effect damage. It's like lightning bolt, like in
Yeah.
Magic. It's just you just take a lightning bolt to the face. Like,
Hey man, you just got me thinking though. If Arcane Rising, right, was this dark energy, do you think there's gonna be a light, like a blessed light damage in Monarch?
I, I I mean I don't see how there isn't. I mean, if you just look at the landing page, right? There's
Yeah.
just this is
It's
like
a fight
pure
between dark and
light.
light. Well, we have the dark damage. That's
Yeah.
arcane damage. So maybe they're gonna have a light damage. That oh man,
My
that
early
got me
theory,
thinking.
my
Yeah,
early theory, and this may be like a way too early theory, like
I love it.
was you know how there's 6 legendaries now, right? And
Hmm.
coming up in Monarch, they released that part. So there's obviously 4 for the classes,
Hmm.
right? So for the new 4 classes, or if there's four heroes, I'll just say.
Yep.
What if they're all about this light versus dark thing?
Hmm.
What if the legendaries? and there's some subtype of like light hero or dark hero, and there's a light legendary and a dark legendary.
That would be
So like you can
nuts.
only equip it if your hero is light, and you can only equip it if your hero is dark in some way.
That would be crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
with Viserai, with the Fable, Arknight shard, so you can only be Viserai. Maybe they're going to have a light hero. With the Fable is just going to be okay. You can only have this if you're doing that light hero. Yeah,
I'm
but
I'm
even the legendaries too. That'll be interesting.
yeah. I'm excited to see what happens with the Fabled. Because I mean, those cards are worth stupid money, and I just really hope, and this is, I don't know if it's controversial. I hope it's not, but I really hope the card's not playable in any real way.
Yeah,
That's how I feel about Fabled in general. I'm all for them existing. I'm not all for them existing in a world where they're playable. I think that's too much of a barrier you're asking for anyone who's trying to build a competitive deck,
hmm
which like I would say like pretty much everyone in my group at least is trying to be competitive as possible. And you're looking at like even let's say Heart was playable in any way. It's really not at this
yeah,
point, but at least as far as I'm aware. And but you're asking even an unplayable card right now, like no one's playing it, is like I think the most recent unlimited listing was like between $600 and $700, and you're like, so like let's say I, I don't know, like the Viserai one and the Eye of Ophidia are really close to that line. Like, because Eye of Ophidia might as well be the wizard fabled.
yeah. And I think that
It's
is really needed for like that. I think is the best Fable card so far, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, think about it. You activate Kano's ability before Kano's ability resolves. You the next effect that's on the stack, so to speak, on the chain, is the Eye of Ophidia. So you get to opt to before you finish doing Kano.
yeah.
And so you get to kind of pick in a way what you're banishing with Kano, and that's just so good.
Yeah, with
Like
one card, it
the card that you
pitches
pitched for
for
resources.
yeah.
Not even like it's one thing if you played a card to opt, right? So you burned a card to opt before you Kano,
Mm.
but you didn't. You pitched the card you were gonna pitch anyway, and you got the opt effect.
That's like having one more card in your hand that is Whisper the Oracle, essentially, right?
Yeah, no, you're totally right. It's like playing a blue Whisper of the Oracle and
Yeah,
also getting the resources on top of it. It's
yeah,
exactly what it's like. So that really skirts the line with like playability. Like if you're playing wizard, I don't know a single wizard who would tell you that they don't play eye if they have one.
mm.
Like you just play it in wizard. And then the Viserai one, I don't know enough about Viserai to be 100% honest, but looking at that card, I see no reason not to play it if you're playing Viserai. I
I
mean,
think it's
luckily
good, especially because Viserai. I think it's only good if you're doing aggro, right? Because if you're defending a lot, having that card, it really sucks because it doesn't have any defensive
it's
value. And I
definitely a
think
liability.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely a liability, and that's why I feel that a lot of pro players don't play it, or any of the people in the tournaments. It seems that if you can't defend with something and you are getting attacked, then it's just yeah, then you take a ton of damage and you're really not able to use the card. But I'm totally in agreement, man. Like the Fable cards, as sad as it is, I don't know if it's sad or not. I think it's brilliant. I think it's brilliant that they have a card that's a shiny little gem, and all the collectors swoon over these cards,
Yeah,
thinking their
yeah,
prices, and the players are like, hey, look at those guys. We don't even play with this card. I mean,
yeah.
that is like the perfect world where
Right, right,
the
right.
players are like, other than the eye that we were talking about, and that does really solve the dilemma here with the collectability and the playability. But yeah, I can definitely see it doing something like prevent one damage, or it seems it's in increments of one, especially except the eye. I guess that opts
Yeah, if they
too,
had just
right?
made it opt one, maybe that even just lowers that power level enough to where it's just a collectible. Because at the end
Yeah.
of the day, that's to me what a fabled should be. It's a collectible. And I don't know. It's just imagine if Wizard was tier one and you're a new player and you're like a lot of players, like it or not, a lot of new players will look at a tier list and say like, oh, that's the tier one deck. I want to build that.
Yep.
And then they go, okay, let me look through, and you're like, oh, this is all affordable. Storm Strider is $100 for unlimited. It's kind of a lot, but $100 card is like, especially for a one of, you're like whatever, and you get to I have a video and you're like $800.
Yeah. Well, if you look at the deck list on FabDB, it's not very pleasing to the eye. It's 1,000, and I think that's where they really need to focus on their next tournament scene. And you've been in the game a long ass time, so tell me, was it the same thing where in the beginning it felt like Bravo was the big deck? Bravo and Dorinthia were head to head. This was in January through June 2020. Let me date that. That was the time period where those heroes were hot.
Okay.
Now, later in 2020, they had the New Zealand Nationals, and it seemed that it was all hosted over Twitter, I think, and that was no Instagram.
Yeah,
And
no, I try to follow on Instagram, and I don't even have an Instagram, so it's funny enough. Instagram like yells at you if you don't have an Instagram after you've
yeah,
been in there for like more than 30 seconds. It was okay.
yeah, yeah. I eventually signed up because I hated that. I know exactly. Yeah, you're right. It's like, hey, you don't have an account. Please make an account, or else you
Yeah.
can't see this. It's like, come on, dude. I just want to look at the picture.
I'm just trying to follow my card game, man.
I know, right? And the whole takeaway around that in later 2020 was there are 4 classes that there were 2 of in the top 8. So I think
Mhm.
2 warrior, 2 guardian, 2 of the other 2 I forget. But the whole
It's like Mech and
takeaway,
Brute, I
yeah,
think.
mech and brute, and the whole takeaway was this game is balanced. All these classes are. So I feel in 2021 they really want to try to say, okay, hey, not only is this game balanced, but it's cost effective. You don't have to spend as much to play
Right.
these decks. Because at that time, I was making content and I was saying, hey, this is great. I love watching these games, but these decks are kind of $500 or
Yeah.
$800 at the time. And the market prices were going up and everything, and the game was going crazy because of its success. But it's just crazy how expensive some of the decks are, and I totally agree with you, man. The next Fable that comes out, I hope it has the prettiest artwork of some crazy like completed bobble, non-cracked bobble, like
Diamond Bobble.
diamond bobble. That would be perfect. The investors would go nuts. Players wouldn't give a shit, and it would be a really, oh man. And if it did something very trivial like prevent 1 damage, I don't know. What do you think it would do? Something really small.
What does Bobble do? Bobble pitches for 2 and does nothing. So
Yeah.
maybe it pitches for 3 and does nothing. I don't
Yeah.
know. So,
Yeah. Pitches
to
for
me, that's
3.
exactly what it should do. It should do nothing. Like I
You
don't.
think? Or maybe
All
if you
fables should
collect
just do
all the
nothing.
fables and you play them at the same time, it does something like it's a
To me, like the
Exodia type
fabled
thing.
should be like Ancient Mew from like way back in the day. Like it should just be like this cool collector thing that doesn't literally. It's almost not like I would almost be okay with like they're not even legal for tournament play. Like it kind of. I know that's kind of controversial because if you pull a card, it should be legal for tournament play. But like to me, like it's just so prohibitive.
Yeah.
So prohibitive. If it ever becomes a meta card, you're like case in point, actually, Heart of Fyendel was played in a lot of decks in Welcome to Wraith format specifically. But there was also a lot of fatigue decks. So that's why it was like if we're going to fatigue, then gaining the 1 life even if you gain only like 3 or 4 life from Heart, then it actually comes up because you're trying to get to this point where your last cards are last ditch effort.
Mm.
Um, that's an aside, but back then a cold foil Heart was $350. And
Wow.
crazy, right? But like,
Can't
and I
imagine
saw
the
plenty of
buyer's
them had
remorse
the
and the
opportunity, but I
yeah.
was like, that's insane. That card's staying exactly where that is. I was very wrong.
Well, I've only seen it in 1 deck, I think, in the Blitzathon where James White had
The
the
Cavdine
the
deck.
Cavdine deck, and I could
Yeah.
definitely, and that's the niche. That's the niche purpose of that card. It seems is when you're trying to fatigue and play the extremely long game. But even still, you're taking a lot of liability by having that card in your
It
deck.
kills
'Cause,
you.
yeah, you can't block on certain turns. But um, yeah, yeah. Hopefully, the next card in Monarch, I agree, man. The Fable. I hope it doesn't do too much at all. I mean, I think it should do something very trivial. Honestly,
Right.
the Eye of Ophidia, I think should only
If it
opt
just said
one.
opt one, I think it'd be fine.
Yeah,
I think it would be fine. But it doesn't. I mean, even opt one is pretty strong, but I don't think it becomes an auto include in like Wizard even. I think
yeah.
it's still good, but I think if anything, funny enough, I think it becomes like an auto include in Ranger of all things, but at Opt One. But
Oh, I could see
um,
that because you're trying to get the hero ability, but and it is kind of
yeah,
weird, man. Why would you do what is it? Gain one health, up two, and then gain one rune
one
chant.
rune chant.
Yeah. I mean, they probably. I'm sure James and the crew with Jason Chung and Chris Gearing, they probably have this whole spreadsheet of all these stats and what equals what.
Yeah,
Can you imagine that? Because when you're making a card, you have to balance the resource cost, the pitch cost, and then what the effect does. So I'd imagine they'd have a huge spreadsheet of okay, dominate equals maybe like this value that we determined, and then maybe adding one attack equals this value. How do you think that
right.
you think they make cards like that? I'd have to
I mean,
imagine.
I could even see them saying like they want the cards to have some very specific niche use, because that's
Hmm.
kind of like if I'm thinking like trying to like put on my lore hat and just say like what would a gem be used for? It would probably be something very specific, like a keystone or something like that, like some kind of very specific thing in lore. So maybe that's like what they're thinking is like we're gonna try to make this card very specifically used for something. We don't want it to
Hmm.
be completely useless, but we also don't want it to be like in every deck ever because then it's stupidly prohibitive. Maybe, and this is just totally just going off of like how other games have handled expensive cards in general, there could be
Hmm.
like a fabled collection 5 years down the road from now that they put kind of like a master set where they put the fabled cards back in it. Still at a high rarity, still hard to get or whatever, but non-foil or something. And it's kind of like their reprint equity. That's like a big term in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is like when are they going to reprint it? Because you can only reprint a card so many times for it to still have value.
Hmm.
So maybe that's what they're thinking is just kind of like, hey, this card may pop up somewhere else, like later down the line. If we make Eye of Ophidian Op 2, then like later down the line we can make a master set
Or
sort
some
of type
secret layer.
product. Yeah.
No, just kidding.
No, no.
No, just kidding.
Walking Dead, Eye of Ophidia.
Yeah. and
um
and that kind of brings me to another part. So you've played a bunch of different trading card games, so this is good. I haven't really played as much. I've collected a lot of Magic. I played Pokemon a long ass time ago, but one thing that I think that Flesh and Blood does really good is the common power creep just seems so much higher than any other game. Because when
yeah,
I would open Magic the Gathering packs, I mean the common cards. I mean 95% of them were just trash. There's
I think you're being generous.
yeah, well, thank you. I was trying to be conservative there, but I mean, there's an easily replaceable card in any other set, unless you're trying to build some weird thing. So,
Yeah.
what's crazy about Flesh and Blood is everything in that pack has use. I mean, there's some deck it seems that those cards are going to be used for. And so, where does Flesh and Blood compare to other TCGs that you played in the past? I'm curious to think your perspective.
So Yu-Gi-Oh! Starting off just because that's the most recent one. I won't say that's nearly at all the best one. It's got its own problems, but Yu-Gi-Oh! Same thing. Common cards, unless they're very specifically for an archetype that you're trying to play, um, they might as well be bulk. They might as well not even exist. There's a few rares, and then mostly your money's in the ultras and secrets out of a core set, um, which are like the supers and majestics, I would say.
And do
Um,
you even play with commons in your decks? Sorry, I just wanna.
no, you're fine. It depends. So like, there's a certain deck. It was Rogue. It was called Unchained. If you play Yu-Gi-Oh, you know what I'm talking about. But a good portion of the in archetype cards, so like just like a warrior would be like an archetype, right? So the Unchained card specifically, there's a chunk of them that were at like the common rarity, and some at super, some at secret.
Mhm.
Um, you would play like one or two of the commons because they were part of the engine that goes in the deck. But like the rest of the commons that came in that set, that deck came in, just might as well not have even existed. And that's true for like most Yu-Gi-Oh. There's very few. Every once in a while, you'll get like a card that's like, oh, why is this a common? This is good. Like,
Yeah.
and then you're like surprised it's that common. Whereas Flesh and Blood is the opposite. So like most of the power cards are at common, and I mean even like some of the rares are just so good, especially for the class rares. I
Oh
mean, I think
yeah.
Steelblade Shunt is a rare, and it's like amazing. Like Steelblade Shunt has won me so many games just because its value for defense value is amazing. But going to other games like Magic, I've only ever drafted Magic, so I can't really speak from there because you do use a lot of commons when you draft.
Mhm.
But I know I've heard from other Magic players like draft chaff is real. Like you once you done like I always kept it because I'm local to a store that buys bulk. So like once I got enough bulk, then I trade it in.
Mhm.
But I mean, I never bothered keeping like actually like holding on to commons or anything like that. I never thought like, oh, I may play constructed, might as well keep these commons. No, I'd always just hold on to a handful of rares that I thought maybe if I played constructed, I'd build around them.
That's smart.
Um,
Yeah, and I mean, it definitely seems that way because when I played Magic a little bit, it did seem that the card power wasn't there. But when I looked at Flesh and Blood cards, I mean, it all seemed pretty balanced, except for you have a couple cards like Command and Conquer and
yeah,
these big cards that it seems that are just really powerful and who knows what will happen. But for the most part, it seems like decks are really built around commons. But again, I mean, I'm extremely biased and
right.
we'll
And I mean,
see
the
how
cards pool's
things.
still small, right? So,
Yeah.
um, the thing that they can do to keep that in check to make sure that always is the case is just make sure that the class cards beat out the generic cards.
Yep.
Right. So because you're locked, right? So that's one of the benefits of having. So there's a lot of arguments against having locked classes, right? I think it's There's another YouTuber who does like the seven deadly sins of card games. I really like that series. I wish I could remember
Ooh,
his
I've
name right
heard
now,
of
but
that.
one of them, or at least I think he alludes to this, is having like locked archetypes where you can't mix and match um different. So like if I want to play like a warrior guardian deck, right? I can't do that because the game mechanics say I can't do that. Whereas like in Magic, if I want to play blue black, I can do that. I just have to build my deck around that, right? So it takes away some player agency. So
Mm,
some people would argue against it for that reason. However, to your point about the commons and rares being good, I think that's how you preserve that because as long as you make the commons and rares in the class that you're playing as good or better, at least in some ways, at least in synergistically with your class, that's how you keep commons and rares good because
yeah.
you're going to say like, oh yeah, this majestic from Ranger would go. I don't know why I picked Ranger because they don't go with anything, but like this majestic from Ranger is really
Ranger, you could
good.
do a Ranger Wizard. That'd be fun.
Yeah, but this majestic from Ranger would go really well in my warrior deck, right? But I'm not allowed to do that, so I don't have to worry about the majestic and Ranger power creeping my rare in warrior. If that makes any sense.
Oh yeah, and I could definitely see some hybrid in the future. I mean, some hybrid hero that
Mm.
literally has no text or maybe a
Yeah,
negative connotation text where you have less cards in your deck in some way. I could definitely. Oh man, I would
that'd be
love
cool.
because that would just mind blow so many people of how many different combinations you could make, man. It would be nuts. And
I
especially if
think
there's four more classes in Monarch, it's just gonna be.
I think personally, what I think we're gonna see first, like that's definitely a possibility. Totally like having dual class heroes, but I think before we see that, we'll see dual class cards. Before we'll see the heroes.
That
We'll
would be
see
cool.
like you can only play this card if you have you can play this card in a ninja or war. It'll say like ninja or warrior attack action card or something like that. So either you can play it in ninja or warrior,
Mm.
something like that. Um, or something else I thought about, which is really cool, at least to me, is you can only play this card if you have a sword equipped or something like that, like a sword art or like a hammer art.
Well,
um,
they did that a little bit, but it wasn't totally that. But Razor Reflexes gives you just that
right, like it targets a
extra.
sword.
Yeah, it targets a sword, and it says you can play it generically if you have like a one cost card, I believe. But then if you have a sword, then you can have any cost card. So I could definitely see them just flipping out that whole thing in general and just saying you have to have a sword, and then it
Yeah,
just
like
says.
imagine if you had like a driving blade, right? Like the
Mhm.
driving blade cards, like pay two, give your weapon go again. Imagine you could have that card literally and just say like instead of saying warrior at the bottom, just says two-handed sword action. And so anyone who wears a two-handed sword in the future could use that card.
Yeah, no, that's definitely gonna happen, I think, and that's gonna open up the game even more. It's gonna be.
Even more,
Yep.
so much more player agency. I love
there's
it. I love
there,
choice. I love depth.
there's so much depth and so much promise, and I want to switch into. I've taken up a lot of your time, man. This is a lot of fun. I appreciate you
Yeah,
talking with me.
I'm here, man.
Okay, well, no, I want to ask. What is it? What's up with your YouTube channel? So tell me more about that. Tell me the purpose of it. I want to plug it
Yeah.
a little bit because
Oh, love it.
it seems
So
like it's focused around gameplay, right?
yeah, so it's called Adventure Company Gaming. I think to find it on YouTube, it's AdventureCo Gaming. I started it with my friends Ryan, Andrew, Alex, and then we kind of onboarded a few other people in our local community. Rob, uh, Nick, all these people are. I consider them part of the Adventure Company. Um, the original intent when I started it was to have just a Flesh and Blood hub. It was going to be like box openings, gameplay, strategy, all of it. Like if it was dealt with Flesh and Blood, it was going to be on the channel. I think at least as far as like right now, um, that became a lofty goal to have like everything related to Flesh and Blood on one channel. And then on top of that, I think there's other box opening channels that just do it better. Right? I think they that's their thing. They can invest way more on product than I could ever imagine. Um, they're excited to open product, whereas like I honestly at this point, if you unless it's alpha, if I'm opening a Welcome to Wraith box, I might as well be waiting for the bus. I know every card in the set, like
No, man. I
nothing
mean,
like really.
don't like I I'm gonna put it out there. I've said so in the past. Opening boxes on video is hard. I don't care what everyone says. I find it the hardest fucking thing to do because I don't know about you. I like to have a nice peaceful zen experience when I'm opening a box. It's nice
Yeah,
and chill. But when I'm videotaping it and I have to explain something about the card and do all this stuff, it's just a lot of work and effort. And yeah, I mean, but I definitely see merit in just recording it, but it definitely takes
yeah,
away from that edge. But honestly, I really like that aspect. So it's a bunch of just your local friends just making a
yeah.
channel.
Yeah, and if you notice that right now there's only one gameplay video, and we hope to change that literally like tomorrow. Like I hope to have a lot of our Blitz stuff commentated over and posted. If not commentated by tomorrow, definitely posted the next day. So we'll probably be commentating over it tonight and tomorrow,
Mm.
and then hopefully either posted tomorrow or the day after, whenever this goes live. Uh, so yeah, so we started with it was basically like it was something that I wanted to start. Originally I was thinking like it's gonna be my channel, but then like the more I thought about it, the more I like wanted my friends to be a part of it. Um, and to that point, like I said, it was gonna be like a hub of like anything Flesh and Blood related. You can find it here.
Mm.
I quickly realized that again, like I want to be genuine. I'm really excited to play the game. I'm not really excited at this point to open any more product. Um, and like God bless anyone who is at this point, but it's just I, and I
Yeah,
don't say this to
anything
brag,
that
but
doesn't have a red sticker on it, I am not.
yeah,
And I only have one. I think I have one Arcane Rising first edition, but other than that, I don't have
I had
anything.
one and I got the bug and was like, I'm just gonna crack it.
I've been there.
Like,
Been like, gotta
um,
open some packs. Yeah.
but I want to be genuine on my channel, and I'm really genuinely happy to commentate games, to have that on the channel, and to have my friends commentate games with me. I think that was really fun, and I think a lot of people gave us a lot of positive feedback to have instead of just me going like, and here I am playing Steelblade Shunt, and like it was just really fun to have that like banter between all my friends, right, and like have like just more than just one person talking, and um, eventually want to be streaming games like live, and then having the games like posted and everything, but I even have some ideas for some strategy videos once I feel comfortable doing those. I kind of want to get to a point where um, this is new to me. So I'll be honest, like there's a lot of there's a lot of growing pains in that first video. I think at one point the life doesn't match what we're talking about. There's a lot of me going a lot because I didn't realize the microphone was picking up me. Like it was really cold in my apartment, and I was like,
I know exactly what you mean, man. Like, you know, my mic. Every time I make a video now, I have to make sure it's like 2.5 inches away from my face. Like, there's a perfect distance because in the beginning I was like blowing into it, and it would just
mhm.
like do, and there is a lot of growing pains, and I'll tell you that like, I don't know any. I'm not the oracle of how to make YouTube content. A lot of this, all this is new to me too, man. I've been doing it for 3 months, but in the beginning it was a lot, but I think it's just important to just post it, you know? And
Yeah,
there's a lot of other people I respect the heck out of that they just make quality content from the beginning and they just, pump that up, but I feel like pump it out at a slower rate. I think it's better to just make as much content. And then with gameplay, man, oh, like if you're playing the game already and you figure out a good setup with lighting, with the camera and
Yeah.
everything, you are golden. You know how many videos you can make if your iPhone
Yeah.
has enough battery? You can make a ton. All you need is a battery bank and some really big memory iPhone, and you're good to go. I mean that, and if you can record, 6 hours of gameplay, I mean, especially if you're doing Blitz games, and I think that's the key. And you were talking earlier where Blitz is competitively, it might not be as good as Classic Constructed, but I definitely think the gameplay content, and I'm trying to look into doing some more of that too on my
Yeah.
stuff. But what is it? I think it has to be shorter games. When you look at those games online that are an hour, it's tough to go through them. But I
Right.
think that what's really helping you is you have a bunch of friends that are doing it, right? Like that's cool,
It
and you
makes it
have
way
the
more
bands.
entertaining.
It does. It's so
Hmm.
hard to just talk by yourself and commentate. It's so much better when you have a bunch of people. Like, if you've seen the Outcast Haven guys,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I've seen a couple of their videos over time. Yeah.
yeah, and it's cool to see that banner back and forth. I saw it on your channel too, man. Like, it's just cool to listen to the commentary of the game. It's something more than just watching the game.
Yeah, and what's like what I was saying before is like what's nice about it with having friends is that they may ask me a question that I wasn't thinking to even answer without the question being asked, if that makes sense. Like they may say like, "Oh, what were you thinking? Like, why did you block that so much? Like, you dropped some really like important cards there to block that. Like, what were you thinking?" And I was like, "Oh, well, I was thinking like, oh, like this is a really momentum turn for him, and I don't want to like." I was like more willing to shut that down than have the momentum on my turn. I can gain it later, something like that. And it's really cool. And I think my friends are characters enough, like in a good
Yeah,
way, to like just provide that entertainment value that me alone, like I don't want to say like, oh, I'm boring or whatever, but like me alone, like it's just better with people. And I don't think I was a little worried having so many people on the video at once because I thought it might be distracting, but I think we handled it really well, and I really appreciate like everything they did, and I'm really excited to get more out there.
oh, I think
And
you
to
guys handle it great. I heard, everybody, the banter was good. It wasn't like people were talking over each other. It was really clean, man. It was good content, and it's cool to watch people just hanging out and having fun with the game instead of, being like extremely serious over different things.
oh,
You're
we were serious in the match though, if you couldn't tell.
Oh, I
Like, we
could
were...
definitely tell that. Like when you're playing the match, the people playing the match, but the commentary was, good
Yeah.
banter. But yeah,
So
because
yeah,
it is
that's
serious. I mean, especially when you get down to low health, it's like, oh crap.
there's a crazy brew on the line.
Yeah.
Eh.
Oh, the $500 card.
Yeah. So the whole point of the channel, I noticed personally that I feel like there was a bit of a void in terms of like gameplay. And I think that's no fault of anyone's really. I think it's really COVID's fault. I think the last year we've been going through, there's just not a lot of gameplay out there. I mean, lucky enough, we're kind of open down here in Central Florida, so I mean, we're safe about it. We wear masks. We sanitize between rounds. We're as safe as you can be while being inside together. Um, but we're getting games out there, and I think that'll really help subside a little bit of the. I mean, you see the YouTube comments. They're like, "It's a bubble. It's for investors. It's for speculators. No one
Yep.
even plays." Like,
Some guy named
and it,
Bronson over there is talking about the secondary
yeah,
market all the time. No, no, I
yeah,
feel it, man. No, and
yeah.
I'm part of it, and that's why I was thinking of making more. Because you're right, there is a huge lack of gameplay. It seems in general, and I feel like that's a huge niche to get into, especially
I
in
mean,
2021.
even like we're talking about like just having like a friend over, like Ryan and I just getting together, someone else, like a couple people getting together at my house, and we'll just set up the webcam over the table and just stream some games out, man. Because I think people are hungry for it. I mean, you
Yeah,
look that channel. I mean, I got some good bumps from some friends that posted it to Facebook and stuff. But I mean, that video got posted with 0 subscribers and 0 views, and then it goes from we're already almost to 30, which I know is not the craziest number, but
yeah, that's pretty high, man.
we're almost at 30 subscribers and almost 200 views on a video that on a channel that had started with literally 0. So I mean, I'm well, it surpassed my expectations, and I'm really excited to put out more content out there for people because I really just want people to play the game. You
Oh,
know,
for
that's,
sure.
that's at the end of the day, that's my goal. I want people to enjoy the game, play the game, and if I can help more people join the game, if I can help more people uh, find the game, discover the game, then I'm all for it. And just making content's fun.
Yeah,
Like that was
it
my
is. It
first
is a lot of
video,
fun.
and just the comments were so positive. You know, you hear so much about like I'm sure maybe if I get bigger, we'll see. But the comments were so positive, even though like some people were like, "Oh, I can't see the guy's cards," or like, "Oh, this is great." Those usually they almost everyone was like, "Hey, this video is great. I would just like to be able to see the guy on the left's cards a little bit better." Like, yeah, it's totally fair. And
Yeah. The community is so positive. I've noticed that too. It's just so nice, and the feedback you get, even if they have a little bit of comments like you said, it's they're trying to help your content get better. And
right,
I've had many people say things, they're like, "Hey, maybe the background." I'm trying to work on that currently. But
yeah, I saw Rudy commented on your video. I was like, maybe we'll get a better background for Bronson or something like that.
Yeah, and I've had he isn't the first one. There's been a lot of people who've been commenting, but he was the biggest voice in the room, I think. But yeah, so I've been trying to focus on that a little bit more. But yeah, overall, just from day one, I feel that the lack of content in general. I think in Flesh and Blood, when I first started making a video, even though it was like me with my really crappy iPhone 7 that I accidentally had to the lowest setting possible for the
Oh
first.
no.
Yeah, and it was just super grainy. But like people were like, "Hey, please make more content. Please just I just want to watch stuff
People are
about Flesh and
hungry.
Blood." They are starving. They are. It's especially for gameplay, and I think you got some going there, man. And what's really cool is you have a group going because you guys don't even have to play with each other. I mean, it could
Yeah.
be all five of you or all six of you, and you play with other people, record it, and if you all do that for 5 hours, then you have what 20, 30 hours of content in a week just by recording the games that you're playing already.
Yeah,
you know.
we have 6 games in the queue from our last tournament for our Blitz tournament.
Hmm.
Or 5 games. There was a hiccup with one. We lost one for a silly reason. But so we have 4 games of Swiss and then the finals. Luckily we still have the finals. So um for Blitz, a Blitz tournament, which I know people love. So I mean I'm not the biggest fan of Blitz, but when I say that, I don't mean I don't think Blitz should exist. I think it absolutely should. I think it's a great format
Hmm.
for different reasons. I just think you get the full breadth of the game in Classic Constructed, and that's kind of where I'm at now. So, but no, it's great. We have a bunch of Blitz games on the docket, so to speak. And we have more coming. I mean, we run locals. We have 2 local events every week. Um, like I said, we're trying to get recordings at the other one once we get a lighting situation figured out. And then we're actually looking to add a third night coming up in March for draft. And so I think drafting on camera would be phenomenal.
Oh, that would be huge.
So the dream there is to have draft cameras. So kind of like if you've ever, I don't know if you've ever seen a draft on like a GP or something where they have, it's almost like if you've ever seen like the World Series of Poker or whatever, and they have like the hand cams.
Hmm.
So we would have a camera at least on like a handful of people and say like, oh, like he's looking at his pack and he drafted this card. Like maybe he's going into Ninja or maybe he's hate drafting the guy next to him or something like that. Like that would be so fun to commentate over. And then just draft games alone lead to the most ridiculous like shenanigans ever because the cards you play in a draft deck are cards you would never play. Like who would play like yellow scar for a scar or
Yeah,
like
yeah, just off stuff.
or like blue demolition crew or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, big hitting cards that are blue and yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be insane, and that's where I think you'd have to build some sort of contraption with a table, right? And then you'd have to have the cameras on all. But how would you even make that into one video? Would you do it some sort of
Um
panning back and forth between? That would be insane. That would be awesome to watch. And if
right.
you look at out there with the content, I think you'd be pioneers for doing that. You'd be the
Yeah, I
first.
mean
Yeah, you could say, "Hey, we're the first people on the YouTube to do it."
so the big goal is that we hopefully get, and this is like my dream for the channel and like hopefully my team's dream, like everyone who's part of the channel.
Uh huh.
We would love for one of our stores to be able to host the calling, and then we would be the ones streaming it, like throwing it out there.
That would be
That would
cool.
be that's like the biggest dream for me. That would be like the coolest thing ever. And I've even talked about like it kind of breaks my heart a little bit, but I've kind of talked about like maybe I have to step down as a player because I think I might start streaming our locals as like an actual like streaming it and commentating like while it's happening. Which I can't
I
really
could see
do.
that for you, man. You have a good commentator voice, and you know like a lot about the game. I mean, you could call it the shouting.
Shoutcasting. Oh my god.
Yeah, no. Well, instead of what is it? The
Oh,
calling,
the calling
the
instead of the
shouting.
calling, the shouting.
Yeah.
I thought
I,
you meant shoutcasting. I was like, I don't know if I Ryan could be a shoutcaster for
yeah.
sure. He gets hype. Um,
No,
he'd be
you,
my color guy, my color commentator, and I'm just like,
that would be cool. Well, I've heard so many times that people say that Orlando's a huge hotspot. Have you heard that too?
oh yeah. So
If
for
that's not
Pokemon,
true, let's keep spreading the rumor so the
yeah, no,
calling
no,
does
no,
come
no,
here.
but no, even for Pokemon, it was really funny because we would talk about how like the way Pokemon does their invites is really silly, and you have to gain points from playing in events, kind of like the XP thing that's on the leaderboards for Flesh and Blood, but more more impactful, I guess.
Hmm.
And we would always talk about how like some guy in like I don't know Missouri gets to play like against like random kids in his environment, and then every like named player for Pokemon like seems to come from Orlando or like
Hmm.
Central Florida at least, and
I
like
didn't know that.
our league cups would be like, which is a league cup is like a I guess it would be like closest to like a city championship, would be like 150 players. And you're like, those are like regionals for some people. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, there
um,
might be big fish in other places, but when they come to the real game, or when they come nationally, and you really see how the cards
yeah, I
fall.
mean, I think Orlando's a really big hotspot, especially even for Flesh and Blood. I mean, you can look. I think a lot of the stores all come from at least Florida. So I mean, the first store I ever bought product at was Sunshine Games down in Tampa.
Hmm.
So I drove down there with Ryan, of course, and we drove down there just to buy Arcane Rising pre-release, um,
That
right before the
that
world ended.
must have been awesome.
Like, we didn't get to play in it because they did their pre-release like the day before, but we called and said, "Hey, we're interested in product," and I don't think the game was very big at all yet. So they had their pre-release with like 6 or so players, and then they just saved product for us. Like they even saved one of the Arknight Ascendancy mats for us. They gave that came like two in the
Mhm.
pre-release kit, and we each bought a case, and we each he got the Arknight Ascendancy mat because he's a big Runeblade. He like as soon as Runeblade got spoiled, he's like, I love it.
Yeah.
So I gave him the Runeblade mat, and then I made sure he got it, and then they gave us each 6 of the promos. Crazy enough, which turned out to be worth a lot, then not worth so much. Now they're kind of creeping back up again. But it was the heroes, so the foil heroes of the Arcane Rising heroes.
Oh
So we
yeah.
each got yeah. So they hooked us up pretty good. They were a good store to us. And
That's awesome. That's great to hear, those stories. That,
yeah,
you
and
got into the game early and they actually did hook you up. Because I think those playmats too, weren't they told to the stores that, hey, here's the playmats, give them out to positive people in the community, or give them to people who are
I
promoting
think
this
so.
game, something
Yeah,
like that. Yeah, or maybe tournament winners. But that's cool,
yeah, and
dude.
that's actually funny enough. That's what we're doing with so our first round of playmats, we didn't really know how to give them away, right? We weren't sure because like we were like, what does People's Champion even mean? Like,
Yeah.
and so we just gave them away. We had so many because like our store kind of got in late, so they kind of got like backlogged with a lot of the older armory kits. So we had it was funny for like every locals for like a month and a half we had like a playmat to give away when normally there's
Wow.
only 2 in a kit. So we went through those and then we were kind of like, okay, so now we're actually current with the playmats. What do we do with them? And so we're actually doing like a voting system. And so I think it's great. So we encourage everyone who comes to our tournaments to vote, and not for like hopefully not just their friend or not one of us or whatever, but someone who's bringing like positive energy, just like the website says. Someone who's like either recruited someone, they're spreading the game, or like when they're playing, even if they're losing, they're like, hey man, we're having fun, or whatever. Like whatever reason you find out,
Yeah.
but just like someone who's been a positive force in some way. You're allowed to vote. At least this is what we do for ours. So you're allowed to vote for anyone who's in our community, but you're only allowed to vote if you show up to the tournament. And then at the end of the
That's
four
smart.
weeks, yeah, and then at the end of the 4 weeks, we tally it up and we say whoever got the most, that's our people's champion for that month. And then something I did, like a little extra, if you got more than 2 votes, I got you at least a booster pack. Because I think if someone's willing to vote for you, I think you should get something for that. Like you
Yeah.
inspired someone to vote for you in some way. Like they said, hey, you're a positive force. I think you should get rewarded for that again, even if it's not the playmat, which is like the grand prize. But and then so now they're also coming with this Crucible of War playmat. So you get one cool mat, which this month is the Mangle mat, and then you
Ooh,
get
that looks
one.
cool.
It looks baller.
Yeah, that's
And
the
then
one
you
where
get,
he has the scythe looking thing with the
it's like
decapitated
punching
head,
a
right?
hole in the dude's head or
Yeah.
whatever.
Oh man,
Yeah.
that is raw.
Yeah. Oh, it's brutal. I love it.
This is an adult game. That's what I love, man. It is adult, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we get in the Crucible mat. And so what we're doing with the Crucible mat, because it's not specifically worded as people's champion, in order to give someone who's new, who might be getting like wrecked by all the competitive players in our area or whatever, every time you show up to a tournament, you're getting an entry into a raffle. And when we do the store championship, just for showing up, you'll have more entries into that raffle for that mat,
Hmm.
which I think is a really cool thing too. Because again, you show up to a tournament and you kind of get your ass handed to you just because, like, there's a new guy who came in and he actually plays really well. And like when I play him, I'm like, man, I really feel like the reason I'm doing so well against you has nothing to do with skill. It's I just have a stronger card pool than you right now.
Mm.
And I think over time, as you get the cards that you need for your deck, you're going to be a force, man. And so, but just keep showing up. And so as he shows up, he still gets that entry to win that match. And so
Wow,
this is like,
dude.
we just keep trying to like bring positive stuff to the people, man. Like,
I love that format. You guys created that yourself? I mean, I feel like everything you just said should be printed out in a Word document and sent to everyone out there. You should post that on the Reddit, the Twitter, the Instagram. You'll have to create an account because,
yeah,
yeah, but that
yeah.
sounds great because that does seem like a really good thing because you have employee of the month type figure who is
Mhm.
doing great and who people vote for that think is getting people into the game, but then everyone else gets a little residual amount. But then you also focus on the players that are coming into the game who, are trying to learn and they might be getting their ass handed to them because, they don't have as many cards or maybe they haven't had many games under their belt. But at
Right.
least you hook them up too, man. That sounds like a great system. And when you're doing all this stuff, is this for how do you so is this for the local game store, Cloak and Blast store, and how do
So we
you
do this all at the
guys
collective.
get it? Oh, the collective. What is the
Mhm.
collective? I'm sorry. I'm
So no, you're fine. The
very
collective is
new.
a
I'm the
they're
guy who
a
would get that last prize you're talking about.
the collective is a store in Maitland. I want to say it's definitely, yeah, I want to say it's in Maitland. It's in Altamont. Sorry, I don't know why I keep saying Maitland.
You're
They're
good.
like next to each other, so whatever. um, but it's pretty much in Central Florida, Orlando area, and it's a comic and game shop, and they've been really good to us as Flesh and Blood players. So we came in and they didn't carry Flesh and Blood at all.
Mhm.
We said, hey, we're looking for a place to play, and there's a big store in Orlando. I don't know if you've heard of it. They have, Rudy calls them like awesome stuff. That's all I'll say.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been there quite a bit. A bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I begged them to carry Flesh and Blood in Welcome to Wraith format. I begged, and you know what's
How did
funny?
you beg? What did you say? Sorry,
Well, I was just like
I want to hear
LSS.
this.
No, I there's a guy who works there who I'm pretty cool with, and I just said, hey man, on the website, there's a on LSS's website, they gave a list of everyone who got um preview product or whatever. Like, hey, these are the stores that we sent out. Like, hey, check out our game.
You with the Ira starter decks, right? And the
Yeah, it
playmat.
was like
Yeah.
the retailer appreciation kit with the double mat and the IRIC decks and the cool foil posters and the whole nine,
Hmm.
and the book. The book was like the big part of it, and cool, awesome stuff.
Awesome stuff.
Awesome stuff was on there.
Yeah.
Not only were they were on there for every one of their satellite stores as well.
Oh
So
my
like they got like
gosh.
all those. And I just went to the guy I know and I said, hey man, I really enjoy this game. You guys have been carrying other games that aren't so popular, other other games,
Yeah.
and I said I really think you should at least give this game a try. and this was before the world ended. So I said like, hey, like just give it a try. Just have it carry. Go to your supplier and
Yeah,
buy
buy
a case.
10 cases. What is that to them? Nothing.
What is even a case at retail to them?
Oh, nothing.
Nothing. Yeah. So throw a case on the shelf and see what happens, right?
Mm.
And nothing. They're just like, oh, let management know, let whoever know. And I was like, okay, we'll see. And then nothing happens. And then so finally I get it's me, Ryan, and at this point I've recruited Alex. So I've finally shown Alex the game sometime between it was like Crucible format. So Crucible was like readily available everywhere, but the hard part was Welcome to Wraith and Arcane were not available anywhere because the Unlimiteds hadn't come out, and those were like they hadn't spiked yet in like crazy terms of prices, but you just couldn't find the product anywhere, so it was just sold out no matter where you went. So anyway, we go to the collective, and I just say, hey, there's this game we've been playing and we really like it, and like you guys carry smaller games like Final Fantasy, like there's not a lot of stores that carry that anymore either, and they carry UFS, which I think is like Universal Fighting System or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So they carry a lot of small games, and I said, hey, do you guys think you'd carry this? And they're like, oh, we'll order a case of it and see how it does. Like,
That's amazing. And you could
yeah,
even say to them, "Hey, we'll buy that case." Like,
no,
and
we
not
did.
only,
We
yeah,
said, yeah, we were like, hey, if you buy a case, I can tell you right now, I'll buy one, he'll buy one, he'll buy one. You'll have one on the shelf.
yeah. And the margins
And
are 40% on those cases.
it's
So, I
crazy.
mean,
It's crazy
it's
high.
it's kind of an instant, like that's a no-brainer deal for them.
So
And they have the biggest requirement, which is you have to have a brick and mortar. So,
they had it. They
yeah.
had it ready to go. And so we told them, hey, you carry the game and we'll buy it.
Yeah.
If you build it, we will come. Like,
Yeah.
uh,
And ever
and
since
we did.
then, do you walk into that store and they're like, "AJ, my
Yeah, they're like
friend."
AJ, Alex, Ryan. They know us all by name, and
That's
it's
too
just
funny.
they've been so good to us. Every time we tell them like we help them set up their store account. So we were like, hey, if you set up a store with PH or LSS, sorry, if you start up your store with LSS and your gem account or whatever, then you get to host these events. We'll come for these events. You get to host tournaments and blah blah blah. You get free prize support from like given to you by LSS. Um, and they did all of it. They were so supportive of us, man, and it
Wow. And
was
did
just
they kind of let you guys handle the armory kits and say, "Hey," or do they
pretty
do it?
much.
Or
So they
yeah.
kind of do. We've kind of been like the de facto TOs for now. We do have plans to hand it over to them because it's their store.
Yeah.
But we so far it's been really good. So we get the armory. They get the armory kits, but then we kind of decide like, oh, these are how they're supposed to be given out. So we followed LSS's guidelines
Hmm.
as much as we could, as so if they say like the full art promos, so the ones that are like Iron Song Response, uh those like kind of like full art promos,
Yeah, yeah, I remember
Sick'em
those.
Shot's another one. uh
And then righteous cleansing or no.
I wish that'd be crazy.
Yeah, that would be an awesome awesome full hour.
Full art Righteous Cleansing, I'll take that tomorrow.
Yeah, the other Guardian card, but you have an interesting format, man. I think you just tapped into something really a store ambassador for a product because
Yeah.
when LGS when someone says, "Hey, let me pitch you to this new trading card game," I feel in their mind they're thinking about the 90% of the TCGs that have come along that screwed them over in the past where they've lost tons of money. But if you're coming into the store and saying, "Hey, I will be the ambassador for this TCG for you," and okay, if you buy 2 cases, I'll buy them from you. Like then
Right.
it's literally they make 40% on both of those cases. Then literally the other case that they have is essentially for free on their shelves. It's a win-win-win. But the biggest thing that you're doing to help them is the labor. I mean, that takes a lot of time to figure out what to do with these armory kits and set up all those things. But when you're doing that for them, literally they just have to exist and do a couple different various things, but
Yeah, I mean
you're
I
helping
think
them
it
with the labor side and
mhm.
also by saying, hey, I'm gonna prepay this for you so they don't have any risk.
Yeah, I think it goes hand in hand. Like we've definitely supported them in a lot of ways. Like I mean, if they get product, it does not last in that store
Yeah, I
in a good
bet.
way. Like it goes to local players, but
Yeah.
um, they get a box, they get a case or two of. I mean, when they were getting when they finally got the unlimiteds, we snapped a lot of that up because we had so many new players who were like, I, I had a play set of every card for a long time because I was just like I was a very big player and I I didn't want to get to a point. I like the game so much that I didn't want to get to a point where there was a deck that came out or like a meta deck that came out that I couldn't play because I didn't have the cards.
Yeah.
So very early on, I bought pretty much a playset of everything.
You're a heavy investor. No, just
Yeah.
kidding.
Yeah.
No, no,
I
I'm
am.
just kidding. No,
No,
that's
I
smart. And
don't. I
I've
don't.
heard other players do that. They buy or a place like three of each card so they can play
Mhm.
in any deck. Then it's essentially if you're playing the game in Monopoly, you have all the game pieces at your disposal. It's not like you
Right.
are missing any part of the board game. You have the complete package, which is really smart, honestly.
Right. And if I want to test out a card, I have the card on hand. I don't have to make a proxy. I don't have to like if I make a last minute decision, I'm like, oh, I really want to play Command and Conquer, but I just don't have a third copy. Like that's not. I don't want to be in that position. So early on, I was like, I just want to get a playset of everything. But anyway, to go back, so I was in that position. So what I was doing was I was making decks for my friends. I'd be like, hey, I'll just build the deck. You just come play.
Mm.
Uh, and so finally, Unlimited was coming out, and so we just bought a lot of it.
Yeah.
Like, and what's cool was that was we got to run drafts, we got to run sealed events, we got to run blitz events, we got to run all the events you'd ever want. And then I got to this point where I was just like, we need to get it out there, man. There just needs to be more people who know that this game isn't about. It's not about the dollar signs all the time. I know first
Yeah.
edition, you can say what you want about it, but the game is good. That's just I put it on YouTube comments. You may even see on like Rudy comments. I comment on a couple people who I know a lot of them are trolls, but they're like, "Oh, does anyone even play? Does anyone
Yep.
care?
And he
Like
pins
stop
him to
doing
the
Flesh and
top.
Blood?" And I'm just like, you should just try it, and it's good.
Well, that's the funny
Like,
thing is I think the biggest reason why investors and collectors are getting into the game is because they have played it enough to know that it really is a great game. And I was in that boat too. I mean, I figured out about the game when Crucible was launching, and at that time it was the first market spike when the Welcome to Wrath boxes went from
yeah,
100 to 300, and that kind of got me in the door. Then I was like, oh, what's happening in this thing? So then I got
it's
in and
newsworthy.
yeah, and then I looked at the lore and the artwork, but once I played the game, I thought, "Oh my gosh, this is legit." Because you feel so powerful into the fact that you might build a bad deck, but at least you can still do things. It's all about strategy, and there's a lot of depth in the strategy and deck building, and all the commons are really high power creep, which is what I really liked, and I think it was really well balanced game. And but not only that, but man, when you look at everything they could do in the future, it's just, I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah,
But it's
Arcane
not,
Rising unlocked that key to me when
yeah,
like I said, that was like, oh, their design space is way bigger than I thought.
yeah. But to your point, and what I was is that once you play the game, then you
Mhm.
realize, wow, this is something. And I really like that you're promoting that on your channel, man. You're making that. That's cool.
Hope to get more out there, man, for sure.
Yeah, and that's going to be huge in the future, I think. I think in 2021 gameplay, the type of content where it's just people hanging out, having fun, and cracking jokes, that's gonna be huge content, I feel. But is there anything else you wanted to plug? I really appreciate your time talking, man. This has been a blast.
Yeah, and like I'll come on again. We can definitely run this back whenever you want. And maybe we can have some other people with us, like some other people from the channel, like with me. I definitely would love to come on for sure.
Sure, I'd be down for that, man. The
Yeah.
less I have to talk, and the more you talk, it sounds great to me. But is there anything
uh,
else you want to plug?
I don't have a lot to plug. I want to plug my channel one more time, just AdventureCo Gaming. We're gonna be doing a lot of gameplay and then hopefully some more strategy. The only box openings we'll probably ever do are just when a set's new. So when Monarch does come out, we'll probably open a case, and that will be the only box opening for Monarch on the channel, just because I think it's fun. But that's definitely not what we're looking for. But so Adventure Co Gaming, definitely want to shout out to my friends who helped me with it. So I mean, I might miss somebody, but Ryan, Andrew, Alex for sure, um, Nick. I mean, and then our other local play groups like Festus and other people. Just you guys have been great. Um, oh, and Rob, of course. He's starting his own team too that we're all gonna be a part of. So his team is called the Talarian Dropouts. So look for content from him. He posts on the Discord. So if you're active on Discord, you should see Talarian Dropouts every now and again. Um, And then other than that, just thank you to the collective and thank you to you for having me on. This has been fun, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks for joining me. And I know it's interesting content talking to somebody for 2 hours about Flesh and Blood. But honestly, I want to grow the community as well. And I really have enjoyed talking to different people because everybody has their different perspective on the game and different angle. And like you've had so much experience in other TCGs that I don't, that I talk out of my ass. So it's really it's really cool to get the direct information from you who's experienced more on that side of the coin. But honestly, I really think your channel is going places, man, and I think that is the really great content to put out in the community because once people play once people play the dang
Play
game,
it. Just try it.
just play it.
Just
Just
try it.
even if you have to play with yourself, it's fine. People say it causes blindness. It does not. It is fine. I've done it multiple times on my channel. Once you play the game, you really realize how beautiful it is, along with everything else. But thanks
And
again, man. Oh yeah,
yeah, and I just want a quick shout out. So
sure.
when you said play the game, like there's cheap ways to try it, right? I know at our local game store, we've given them thousands of cards of bulk. So maybe if you know a game store that's carrying it, or if you're someone who's buying cards from your game store, give them your bulk if you don't want it, and then maybe they can give that to a new player. And then on top of that, if you haven't heard of Tabletop Simulator and the Discord channel, those are great places to play because you can buy Tabletop Simulator. It's on sale all the time.
Yep.
Even if it's not on sale, I think it's $20. You
$20,
pay 20 bucks.
$10.
Yeah, you get the game. You get a bunch of other games too, which just go into Tabletop Simulator. But you get to try Flesh and Blood for free. You can have every card in the game, and you can play a full-on Flesh and Blood game, and you get to try and just see if you like it.
Yeah, along with
Um,
every other board game that's ever been produced since 2001, you get it all.
correct.
But you're right. You can play any type of deck, and not only that, it syncs with FabDB. So it's really
Wonderful.
you're building your decks
Wonderful.
anyway on FabDB. Even if you're doing physical decks, you want to build it on that platform so you could just sync. It's just you're right. That's probably the cheapest way to play the game in the virtual world, and you can play people around the world. I've played people from Australia, from the UK, all around the world. But you make a great point that even though it might seem tough to get into the game, it's really not. Like there's very affordable alternatives in the meantime.
For sure. All right.
Right. Thanks again, man. Take
Thank
care.
you, man. Have a good one.
You too.